Chapter 262. The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. Putting a gunny sack over someone was something she was familiar with. She had done it with money last time, so it was about the same this time. The Crown Prince Consort didn't even have time to shout before she was carried away with a whoosh. The two female officials had clearly been following behind the Crown Prince Consort, but the Crown Prince Consort had disappeared in the blink of an eye. It was true that the Crown Prince Consort had turned into the alley before the two of them, but she shouldn't have disappeared in the blink of an eye, right? Was it this fast? The two quickly walked in front of the carriage and lifted the curtain, only to see that the carriage was empty. One of them asked the Imperial expert, "Have you seen the Crown Prince Consort?" The Imperial expert said strangely, "Isn't the Crown Prince Consort with you?" The female official said, "The Crown Prince Consort just came over. Did you not see her?" The Imperial expert said, "When did the Crown Prince Consort come over?" The female official said urgently, "She clearly came over." The Imperial expert snorted. "Would I not know if she came over?" "You." "Forget it, Sister Ming." The other female official with the surname Qing shook her head. "Don't argue. Let's hurry and find the Crown Prince Consort. Maybe she is nearby and went to see someone." Female official Ming muttered, "How could the Crown Prince Consort leave us behind to go see someone alone?" Female official Qing said, "Let's search first. Split up and search." The three split up to search, but this was a straight alley without any forks. There were many carriages parked here. They searched the carriages one by one, but there was no trace of the Crown Prince Consort. "Did you really see the Crown Prince Consort walk into the alley?" the Imperial expert asked. Female official Ming said anxiously, "The Crown Prince Consort was in front of us. She turned a corner. If she didn't enter the alley, where did she go?" The Imperial expert raised his head in suspicion and looked at the roofs on the two sides. Had she been kidnapped? The curtain of night fell. The last sliver of orange light of the sunset stubbornly floated on the cornices of the dugong, reflecting a dazzling light. Gu Jiao tiptoed, her body as light as a swallow. Carrying a large sack, she flew down from the eaves and entered the orchard near Jadewater Alley through the back door. The orchard was half open, and the children in the nearby alleys loved to go in to play. If they picked the fruits, they had to buy them by the caddy, which was cheaper than the ones on the market. At the back of the orchard, there was a tool shed that had been converted from a horse shed. It had been in disrepair for a long time and was leaking in and out of use. Gu Jiao pushed open the door and casually threw the sack inside. He did not show any mercy to the woman. The Crown Princess was jolted all the way, and her intestines almost broke from the jolting. When she suddenly fell to the ground, she cried out in pain, "Ah, who are you?" Gu Jiao didn't want to talk nonsense with her. She took the sack off her head. After being tossed all the way in the sack, her hairbun had come loose and her pearl hairpin had fallen off. She was in a sorry state. She subconsciously raised her hand to block the light in front of her eyes. When she realized that it wasn't too glaring, she looked at the robber standing in front of her. It was actually a woman wearing a gaudy peacock plume mask. A trace of indescribable astonishment flashed across her eyes. "Who exactly are you? What do you want to do?" Gu Jiao casually walked in front of her and looked down at her. She reached out and grabbed the front of her clothes, lifting her up. Following that, she gave her a big slap and directly threw her against the wall. "Using a cat to scare her husband? Haha." The Crown Princess had never been treated like this before. Although her maternal family was not worth mentioning compared to the Du family and Duke Luo's residence, it was still a scholarly family. The young ladies in her family were all pampered and raised. When she became the little Marquis's fiancée, she was the moon surrounded by the stars and everyone tried to curry favor with her. The biggest grievance was that she was ignored by other countries when she went to the Kingdom of Liang, but that wasn't targeted at her. She was put in a sack, lifted up like a little chick, and even given a big slap. This was simply inconceivable, all right? You. She fell to the ground and looked coldly at Gu Jiao, trying to use her powerful aura as the crown princess to intimidate the other party. However, sorry. Gu Jiao grabbed her. Duong, duong, duong. Again and again, like driving a stake, she wished she could plant her into the ground. You're crazy. I'm, Crown Prince, Ash, The Crown Princess was beaten until she broke down and couldn't even speak properly. Gu Jiao's little fists beat her from sunset until the sky turned dark and successfully beat her into a pig's head. Gu Jiao blew on her little fists. It's really not easy for me. I'm really tired. The Crown Princess with a crooked nose and slanted mouth. Who exactly was the one who wasn't easy? Suddenly, footsteps were heard outside the room. Immediately after, the half-closed door was kicked open, and the Imperial Court expert beside the Crown Princess rushed in. He glanced at the Crown Princess, who was in a sorry state, and the veins on his forehead popped. Stop. Let go of the Crown Princess. Gu Jiao clapped her hands. Oh. The Imperial Court expert didn't care if the other party was a little girl. He rushed over and started fighting with Gu Jiao. Every move he made was a killing move, and the two were instantly entangled in a fight. The Imperial Court expert would quickly realize that stopping Gu Jiao was his biggest mistake tonight. Actually, Gu Jiao was almost done with the beating and was about to leave. If the Imperial Court expert didn't attack Gu Jiao, he could immediately take the Crown Princess away. Unfortunately, the two started fighting. As expected of an Imperial Court expert, Gu Jiao found it difficult to ward off his attacks at the beginning. However, after a few dozen moves, Gu Jiao gradually entered a good state and slowly reached a tie with him. After a while, she seemed to be gaining the upper hand. From the looks of it, the Imperial Court expert probably couldn't restrain this girl. Whether or not he could restrain her, Gu Jiao didn't want to beat the Crown Princess anymore. However, the Crown Princess didn't think so. She thought that if she didn't leave now, she would definitely be beaten later. Therefore, she used all her strength to escape while the Imperial Court expert was holding off Gu Jiao. She was quite lucky. She ran into Qin Chuyu, who was playing in the orchard, even though she was escaping in a panic. Qin Chuyu, little Jing Kong, and Su Dangcong shook off the young eunuch and the Su family servants and ran to a large jujube tree. Little Jing Kong loved to eat jujubes from this tree. Unfortunately, there weren't any jujubes right now. However, there was a large bird's nest. I'll climb up first, Su Dangcong said. He was the youngest son of the Minister of War and had practiced martial arts since he was a child. He wasn't too spoiled and climbed up the tree quickly. Little Jing Kong also quickly climbed up the tree. Only Qin Chuyu was left. Qin Chuyu was chubby and spoiled. He couldn't even climb up a stool, let alone a tree. Like this. Little Jing Kong anxiously showed him how to climb up the tree. Wrap your arms around it and cross your legs. Move your arms first, then move your legs. Lift your butt and you'll be up. Qin Chuyu tried a few times and really climbed up a little. At this moment, the Crown Princess appeared. She was usually a very calm person, but people's fear of the unknown could always overwhelm their rationality. Gu Jiao didn't want anything and just kept beating her up. She was so terrified that she didn't even care about her manners and status. When she saw Qin Chuyu, she saw him as her savior and suddenly pounced on him. Little Qin Chuyu finally climbed a few feet. When he turned his head, he saw a pig's face. He was so scared that he screamed, "Ghost!" Then, he kicked his opponent's face. The Crown Princess's nose, which was intact, was crooked by Qin Chuyu's kick. Her nose was bleeding. Qin Chuyu was even more scared. I can't do it. I'm going to fall down. Qin Chuyu's limbs turned to jelly, and he fell to the ground. Little Jing Kong and Su Kanji saw this and hurriedly climbed down to help him. The Crown Princess held back the pain and covered her bleeding nose. Little Qi, it's me. I'm the royal sister-in-law. Where are your servants and carriage? Leave with the royal sister-in-law. She was so excited that she even forgot to hide her and Qin Chuyu's royal identity. Little Jing Kong and Su Kanji didn't understand what she was talking about. Ah! Don't come over. Qin Chuyu was so scared by the crown princess's ghost-like appearance that he kept stepping back. Little Jing Kong was a smart kid. With his rich life experience, he instantly came to a conclusion. Brother Little Chi, brother Kanji, she's a prostitute. The prostitute used this trick to kidnap him and Ming, Er's brother. She pretended to know them and said that they were their children. No one would suspect her even if she took them away. Su Kanji thought Little Jing Kong was right. Plus, this wasn't the royal sister-in-law in Qin Chuyu's memory. Therefore, the three of them agreed that she was a prostitute who kidnapped children. They couldn't tolerate a prostitute. The three little kids had a strong sense of justice. They found a stick and gave the man a good beating. Therefore, after being beaten up by Gu Jiao, the crown princess was beaten up by the 3B** Chis of the Imperial College with sticks. Qin Chuyu was the leader. Who could reason with them? On the other side, Marquis Xianping didn't know about the crown princess's tragic experience. He got on the carriage to return home. The coachman was Chong Jing. Halfway through the journey, he suddenly asked Chong Jing to stop the carriage. "Chong Jing," he said. "Yes." Chong Jing turned around and lifted the curtain to look at him. There was no light in the carriage, so it was a little dim. However, there were candlelight and moonlight on the street. The moonlight shone through the gaps in the curtains and fell on Marquis Xuanping's handsome face that had been sculpted by time. Chong Jing couldn't see what was good about this person. Marquis Xianping sighed. "Is there anything you're afraid of?" Chong Jing thought about it seriously and shook her head. "No." Marquis Xianping looked at her suspiciously. "Nothing?" Chong Jing lowered her head. "Cockroaches." Marquis Xianping, "You're the #1 assassin of the Dark Knight sect. You're afraid of a few cockroaches?" "Dirty," Chong Jing explained, feeling wronged. When Chong Jing was very young, she ate a few cockroaches in her food. That was someone who deliberately disgusted her. In the end, she was really disgusted. Ever since then, she would remember that she ate cockroaches. Her scalp would feel numb. Marquis Xianping raised his eyebrows and said with some pride, "At least Heng is afraid of cats." "She's better than you." The corner of Chong Jing's mouth twitched. "What sense of existence are you looking for in this?" Speaking of which, Marquis Xianping really didn't expect Heng to be afraid of cats. Thinking carefully, he really wasn't a good father. He didn't even know about his son's taboos. Marquis Xianping was conflicted for a moment. Making up his mind, he said, "Don't go back to the manor first. Go to Bai Shui Alley. Also, find me a cat." Chong Jing quickly found a stray cat on the side of the road. Marquis Xianping picked up the pitiful little stray cat and frowned. Could this thing test whether or not he was Heng? Gu Jiao and Little Jing Kong still hadn't returned home when it was dark. Xiao Lulang decided to go out and look for them. Just as he crossed the threshold of the front yard, he saw a familiar carriage stopped at the door. Marquis Xianping sat outside the carriage, holding the stray cat in his hand with disdain. He had made up his mind to use this cat to test Xiao Lulang. However, just as Xiao Lulang walked out of the door, he instinctively stuffed the cat into Chong Jing's arms and used his broad body to block Chong Jing. His movements were too fast. Xiao Lulang didn't see the cat and only felt that his actions were strange. Xiao Lulang ignored him and walked out of the alley expressionlessly. Chong Jing looked at the stray cat that was suddenly stuffed into her arms and asked, "You're not going to test him?" Marquis Xianping sighed, "I'm not going to test him." At least he didn't need to test him like this. Why? Chong Jing didn't understand. Marquis Xianping sighed, "I'm afraid that he really is Heng." Chong Jing looked at the stray cat in her arms and then looked at Marquis Xianping. "If it's Heng, isn't it good?" Marquis Xianping bitterly said, "Not good. If it was him, he would be frightened by this cat." Understanding complex emotions was a killer's weakness. Just like how Gu Jiao couldn't understand Yao Shi's choices in love, Chong Jing also couldn't understand Marquis Xuanping's caution in front of Xiao Lulang. Chong Jing asked, Then do you still want this cat? Marquis Xianping faintly said, No. Also get rid of all the stray cats in the manor. The two female officials finally found the crown princess who had been mistaken for a prostitute in the orchard. The crown princess could no longer be described as unrecognizable. The female officials saw that Qin Chuyu was the one leading the beating and didn't know what to do. Giving the order to arrest was impossible. The crown princess was the emperor's daughter-in-law, but Qin Chuyu was the emperor and empress's son. Also, being beaten like a prostitute was too shameful. If this got out, would the crown princess still have any face? In the end, the two female officials took the crown princess away with the excuse of going to the authorities. No, dragged her away. After Qin Chuyu returned to the palace, he bragged to his father emperor about how he had chased away a prostitute and received great praise from the emperor. The Zhuang Manor. The physician removed the stitches for Royal Prince An and changed the medicine for the last time. He reminded him to stay in bed and rest more before taking his medicine box and bidding farewell. The servants sent the physician out of the manor. Grand Tutor Zhuang gave Wu Yong a look. Wu Yong understood and walked out of the room, closing the two doors from the outside. Royal Prince An leaned against the head of the bed and pulled the blanket over his injured leg. He calmly said, It's late. Grandfather, you should rest early. Grand Tutor Zhuang's eyes were slightly cold. Marquis Xianping has gone too far. I will avenge you sooner or later. Royal Prince An looked down and sneered. Easier said than done? He is the emperor's brother-in-law and also the emperor's elder brother-in-law. He also has military power and can command hundreds of people. Who can do anything to him? Grand Tutor Zhuang's eyes became even colder. If the Empress Dowager was still in the imperial court, Marquis Xianping wouldn't have the chance to stir up trouble. Royal Prince An didn't refute the mention of Empress Dowager Zhuang. She was indeed a strategist and controlled the affairs of two dynasties. When Marquis Xianping was still playing in the mud, she was already the most favored empress. However, no matter how powerful a person was, there would be times when the horse stumbled. How did she get leprosy? Grand Tutor Zhuang coldly said, You've misjudged Xiao Lulang. I'm afraid that he already recognized the Empress Dowager. From the beginning, his goal of getting close to the Empress Dowager wasn't simple. It's a pity that we were all kept in the dark. In order for him to bring the Empress Dowager to the capital, he persuaded the emperor to reopen the Imperial College. Fortunately, the Imperial College hasn't fallen into the emperor's hands. There is still room for redemption. However, no matter what, the Empress Dowager can't remain in their hands. This time, he didn't refute his grandfather's words. However, he seemed to have thought of something and was silent for a moment. Then he asked, Grandfather, what do you plan to do? Grand Tutor Zhuang flicked his wide sleeves, openly visit the Empress Dowager and acknowledge her. In Bai Shui Alley, the matriarch had just finished playing a game of cards. She pushed the card table. That's all for today. I'm not playing anymore. The neighbors reluctantly returned to their homes. That's right, although they lost money, they still had a good time playing. This was mainly due to the matriarch's strategy of winning money. The matriarch wouldn't play cards with the same table every day, and she wouldn't always take advantage of one person. For example, Auntie Zhao lost yesterday, so she let her win a little today. Everyone felt that it was normal to win and lose. However, if they carefully calculated the accounts, they lost their own money and won their companion's money. No one had ever won money from the matriarch. The matriarch stretched and went next door to see Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshun. Gu Yan lazily lay on the bed and fell asleep. Gu Xiaoshun sat on a small stool and obediently did woodwork. The matriarch was very satisfied. Xiaoshun, this child, was very sensible. She didn't have high expectations for Gu Yan. It was good that he was alive. Madame Yao was doing embroidery. Lu Lang and the other two were doing something outside. It was already dark, but they still hadn't returned. The matriarch was hungry, so she went to the kitchen to find food. Nanny Fong went to the embroidery building to get clothes, and the old chancellor cooked at night. The old chancellor stir-fried a few home-cooked dishes, stewed a pot of asparagus chicken soup, and fried a few brown sugar glutinous rice cakes. Next was the food that was specially made for little Jing Kong: lily egg soup, tofu vegetarian meatballs, and stir-fried vegetable shrimp. "Have the children come back?" the old chancellor asked. His tone was familiar, and his address was natural. It was exactly the same as when Uncle Zhao and Aunt Zhao talked about their children. Not yet. The matriarch began to look for food. Here. The old chancellor seemed to have known that she would be hungry, so he took out a small plate of brown sugar glutinous rice cakes. This plate of glutinous rice cakes was sprinkled with white sesame seeds. The children didn't like to eat brown sugar glutinous rice cakes sprinkled with white sesame seeds. The matriarch didn't feel that there was anything wrong. She held the plate, sat down on a small stool, and slurped the glutinous rice cakes. One was busy in front of the stove, and the other was eating behind it. The oil in the pot sizzled, and the room was filled with the smell of crispy oil and scallion. Knock, knock, knock. There was a knock on the door outside. "Who is it?" Yao Shi put down her embroidery and walked out. The old chancellor quickly walked out of the kitchen and said to the naked Yao Shi, "Let me do it, let me do it." "Ah, okay." Yao Shi obediently returned to the room. The courtyard door was actually half closed, so it shouldn't be a neighbor. Otherwise, they would have directly pushed the door open and entered. "Who is it?" he asked as he opened the wooden door. He immediately saw Grand Tutor Zhuang at the door, and his brows twitched. He closed the door and smeared some wall dust on his face before opening the door again. He squeezed out a strange voice and asked, "Who is it? What's the matter?" Grand Tutor Zhuang sized him up strangely. It was clear that he was baffled by his actions of opening and closing the door. Then, he saw that his face was covered in dirt and his clothes were plain. He instantly treated him as a servant in the courtyard and didn't look at the old chancellor directly. Otherwise, if he looked at him a few more times, he would still be able to recognize him. Grand Tutor Zhuang said indifferently, "Call your matriarch out, I have something to talk to her about." The old chancellor had calculated everything, but he didn't expect that Grand Tutor Zhuang would come personally and that Empress Dowager Zhuang wouldn't be able to recognize the Zhuang family. One had to know that before Empress Dowager Zhuang lost her memory, the junior she doted on the most was Royal Prince N. When Royal Prince N went to Chen Empire as a hostage, Empress Dowager Zhuang was so angry that she couldn't eat for a few days and nights. She even fell sick. Now that Lu Lang had snatched away the position of the new top scholar that should have belonged to Royal Prince N, if her memory was awakened by the Zhuang family, Lu Lang would be in trouble. The old chancellor puffed out his chest and said, "What matriarch? Who are you? Have you found the wrong person? Go. If you don't go, I will report it to the officials. A dog servant dares to block my master's path. Move aside." The guard beside Grand Tutor Zhuang took a big stride forward and pushed the old chancellor away mercilessly. The old chancellor staggered and almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, a hand reached over and supported him in time. He turned his head and saw that it was over. The demon empress who brought disaster to the country had come out. The matriarch didn't even look at the guard. Her cold gaze landed on Grand Tutor Zhuang's face. She was dressed in plain clothes and didn't have any extra pearl ornaments on her head. However, her noble aura seemed to burst out from her bones. Even the old chancellor who was supported by her couldn't help but shiver. This was the first time he was terrified after being with her for so long. It was even fiercer than when she came to rob his private stash with a knife. Digression. Just 3 more votes to break the 1,000 mark. Look at my longing eyes. Continue reading today. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels to read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_826/112788824. HTML Genius remembers this website's address in a second. www.zhhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website, zhhbqg.com. Chapter 263. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. The matriarch felt that in this situation, she should say, "Kneel." Although she didn't understand what was going on, before she could speak, the guard had already knelt down. The matriarch was speechless. Grand Tutor Zhuang also walked forward with an excited expression and cupped his hands in greeting. "Who are you?" the matriarch asked. "This official." Grand Tutor Zhuang was about to say something when he remembered that she didn't remember the past and changed his words. "I am your older brother. You are Zhuang Jins. I am Zhuang Boyong. Do you still remember me?" "Older brother." The matriarch looked at him suspiciously. "Yes." Grand Tutor Zhuang said excitedly, "Do you remember now?" The matriarch didn't answer him. Instead, she looked at the old chancellor beside her and asked, "Did you have someone push him?" "This servant is so unreasonable, he actually shut me out." Grand Tutor Zhuang glanced at the old man beside the matriarch with disgust. He didn't know why, but he was especially annoyed. When he saw him standing with his younger sister, he had the urge to rush up and beat him up. The matriarch looked at him and said impatiently, "What did you just say?" Grand Tutor Zhuang was stunned by her unfriendly tone. "I said, he shut me out?" The matriarch said, "The sentence before that." Grand Tutor Zhuang thought for a moment. "This servant is so unreasonable?" The matriarch nodded, walked to the door, and hooked her finger at Grand Tutor Zhuang. Grand Tutor Zhuang walked over. "Younger sister." The matriarch patted his shoulder. "Turn around and face outside." Grand Tutor Zhuang didn't understand, but he still turned around. The next second, he felt a pain in his butt. The matriarch had kicked him out. He was caught off guard and tripped over the threshold, falling to the ground. Without waiting for him to react, old mistress slammed the courtyard door shut with a bang. "Servant! Servant your ass! Who are you to bully my man?" Grand Tutor Zhuang was shut out. He knew that he wouldn't be able to see Empress Dowager Zhuang again today. He secretly gritted his teeth and left unwillingly. On the way back, he was very puzzled. Why did Empress Dowager Zhuang treat him like this? Did he not know him and treated him as a bad guy, or was he trying to get revenge for that old man? Ridiculous. When did Empress Dowager Zhuang care so much for a servant? She regarded human lives as worthless. She could even send a princess of an empire to be married off casually. How could she stand up for a servant? Actually, not only was Grand Tutor Zhuang puzzled, the old chancellor was also confused. He would believe it if Zhuang Jins took a knife and cut him into pieces, but he didn't dare to believe that Zhuang Jins would stand up for him. But he didn't believe that it had happened. He wasn't a fool, and he wouldn't deceive himself by thinking, "Oh, she's not doing this for me. She might be wary of strangers." "You're already half a foot in the grave. Can you have some shame?" The old chancellor touched the bridge of his nose and said embarrassedly, "That." He wanted to say thank you, but he couldn't. Both master and disciple had the same temperament. When they were fooling people, they would talk loudly without being stuck, but when it came to the crucial moment to set off the atmosphere, they would be tongue-tied. The old lady didn't have his kind of awkwardness at all. She only did something that couldn't be any more normal. She walked towards the kitchen carelessly. The glutinous rice cake wasn't finished yet, and it would get cold if she didn't eat it. The old chancellor looked at her anxious back view and guessed that she was going to find food. Was this foodie still that all-powerful demon empress who brought disaster to the country? For the first time, the old chancellor had doubts about his own cognition. Could it be that Zhuang Jin's nature wasn't as bad as what he saw? Or perhaps he had misunderstood Zhuang Jins in the past. Everything else could be cleared up, but the matter of her using the former emperor's dragon body to make a deal definitely couldn't be cleared up. Other empresses were racking their brains to seize the emperor's favor, but she took the green token to her own palace of earthly tranquility. If one wanted to get the token, they would have to pay first, and the highest bidder would sleep. She even set up a reward. If one was pregnant with a dragon seed, they would be rewarded with 1,000 taels of silver. If one was born safely, they would be rewarded with 2,000 taels of silver. If one gave birth to a prince, they would be able to serve the former emperor for free once. How much silver did she earn? She couldn't even count it. However, what was even more infuriating was that the former emperor had been kept in the dark and was even complacent that he had such a virtuous empress who would always find beauties for him. That was how Zhuang Jin's title of virtuous empress came about. When the former emperor found out the truth, it was already too late. The power of the imperial court had already fallen into the hands of Zhuang Jin and the Zhuang family. The former emperor died with hatred. Zhuang Jin dethroned the crown prince and supported the current emperor to become the emperor. She then began her 20 years of ruling from behind the curtain. Zhuang Jin, oh Zhuang Jin, what kind of person are you? If one day you remember who you are, will you return to the original Zhuang Jin or continue to be the grand aunt of Lu Lang and Jiao Jiao? Xiao Lulang went to the orchard to pick up Gu Jiao and little Jing Kong who were on their way back. Both the adult and the child were very refreshed as though they had done something amazing. Little Jing Kong was jumping up and down happily. He was happy to hit a beggar. He was happy to meet Jiao Jiao. Today was another day for him to be arrogant and brave. The 2 adults and 1 child returned home. Gu Jiao went to fetch water for little Jing Kong to wash his hands. The old chancellor called for dinner and started to set the table. Gu Xiaoshun shook Gu Yen awake. Time to eat. Gu Yen rubbed his sleepy eyes and turned over lazily. I'm not eating, I want to sleep. Gu Xiaoshun said, eat before you sleep. No. Gu Yen covered his head with the blanket. Suddenly, a pair of small icy hands reached in and held Gu Yan's face. Gu Yen was jolted awake by the cold. He lifted the blanket and sat up. Little monk, are you itching for a beating? Little Jing Kong ran to the door and made a face at him. Ha ha ha. You wait. Gu Yen quickly got out of bed. Little Jing Kong waved his small arms to complain. Jiao Jiao. Jiao Jiao. Brother Yen wants to hit me. Gu Yen grabbed the feather duster. You're not allowed to complain blindly. You're the one who attacked me sneakily. The 2 little masters quarreled, and the chickens and dogs in the courtyard also began to quarrel. It was a mess every night. The old chancellor thought to himself that if someone dared to make a ruckus in front of Empress Dowager Zhuang in the past, that person would have been dragged out to the 10 feet of red. Unlike now, she was eating melon seeds while watching the bustling scene. After dinner, the old chancellor saw that there was no one around, so he asked the old lady a question. Aren't you afraid that person is really your brother? The old lady gave him a despising look. How is that possible? Isn't Lu Lang the only one left in my family? Ah, yes. The old chancellor didn't dare to deny, for fear that he would accidentally say something wrong. But looking at her heartless look, he suddenly couldn't bear it. He asked, what if you still have a family with power and influence? Will you want to go back? Something is wrong with you. The old lady looked at him suspiciously. She put the melon seeds on the stove and picked up a kitchen knife. Tell me honestly, are you hiding money from me again? The old chancellor was speechless. The old chancellor felt that it was necessary to mention to Xiao Lulang about Grand Tutor Zhuang's visit. At night, after everyone fell asleep, Xiao Lulang was called to the next room by the old chancellor. After telling him about Grand Tutor Zhuang, Xiao Lulang wasn't surprised at all. The old chancellor was puzzled. You already knew that the Zhuang family knew? Xiao Lulang didn't hide. When I was in the countryside, Prince An came to my house. That was so early. The old chancellor was stunned. He knew that Royal Prince An had gone to a small county. That was before the provincial examination. It had been almost a year since then. The old chancellor muttered, It seems like the reopening of the directorate is related to the Zhuang family. Even if you didn't become the top scorer, the Zhuang family would let you come to the directorate. They know your situation very well and knew that you would bring your family along. Zhuang Jins would then be able to enter the capital openly. The old chancellor suddenly called the old lady by her full name. Xiao Lulang was slightly stunned and glanced at the old chancellor. However, the old chancellor didn't notice anything wrong, so Xiao Lulang didn't say anything. The old chancellor was immersed in his own thoughts and continued, "Now that you are the top scorer and Marquis Xian Ping openly approached you, the Zhuang family must think that you have sided with His Majesty and Marquis Xian Ping's residents and want to be their enemy. Therefore, they can't put Zhuang Jins in your hands. Look, Grand Tutor Zhuang was rejected today, but he won't let it go." The old chancellor was right. Grand Tutor Zhuang didn't give up on bringing Empress Dowager Zhuang back. Since the soft approach didn't work, then he would use the hard approach. It was naturally impossible to make a move on Empress Dowager Zhuang. Not to mention whether it was a capital offense or not, Empress Dowager Zhuang was a noble person. If something went wrong, they couldn't bear the responsibility. Thus, Grand Tutor Zhuang glanced at the person beside Empress Dowager Zhuang. Xiao Lulang was too cautious. It was said that the girl had some skills, but it wasn't easy to succeed. It was said that the girl's mother also lived there. Unfortunately, she didn't go out at all, so it wasn't easy to succeed. Then, there were only 3 children studying in the directorate and Qinghe Academy left. The younger one always mingled with the son of the Minister of War and the 7th Prince. It was easy to alert the enemy. Finally, after careful consideration, Grand Tutor Zhuang locked onto one person, Gu Shaoshun. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/896428286/112786066. HTML Genius remembered this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gur mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 264. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. Gu Yen kicked off his blanket at night and coughed a little in the morning. Yao She was worried about him, so she did not let him go to school. Naturally, she did not go to Master Lu and Nan Xiong's place to learn after school. Gu Shaoshun still went. Lu Quan sent him there. In the past few months, Master Lu basically did not teach Gu Shaoshun too many technical things. He just let Gu Shaoshun whittle the wood over and over again. Gu Shaoshun did not show any impatience, nor did he ask when he would stop whittling wood. Master Lu felt that this child was very calm. Gu Shaoshun, it's mainly because studying is too boring. In comparison, cutting wood is simple and easy. I don't even need to use my brain. After cutting wood, Gu Shaoshun went to eat at his master and master's house as usual. The food was usually cooked by Nan Xiong. Nan Xiong's cooking was not very good. She even disliked eating it. Gu Shaoshun, however, did not seem to dislike it at all. Whatever Nan Xiong cooked, he would eat it. He did not waste a single mouthful of soup. Because of this, Nan Xiong also felt that Gu Shaoshun was very good. Gu Shaoshun, it's mainly because brother-in-law's cooking is too bad. After tasting brother-in-law's cooking, master's wife's cooking is already at the level of a chef. After finishing today's lesson, Gu Shaoshun said goodbye to his master and master's wife. He sat on the carriage to go home. At this time, the sky was already dark. It was not like the previous days where there would be a sunset glow. Today, the sky was gray, as if there was a huge black curtain pressing down. "It's going to rain," Lu Quan said. Gu Shaoshun did not like sitting in the carriage. He liked sitting outside. Hearing Lu Quan's words, he lifted the curtain and sat out. He said to Lu Quan, "Master said that if it rains, he won't come. The mountain roads are hard to travel on. He's afraid of accidents." Lu Quan could hear his regret. He smiled and comforted him. "It's only going to rain for a day or two. It's not a big deal. You can come again soon." Gu Shaoshun nodded. The two of them chatted for a while. The air was stuffy, and it seemed like it was going to rain heavily. Gu Shaoshun was thinking about how many days it would take for them to come over. Suddenly, she heard Lu Quan cry out. Lu Quan pulled on the reins and stopped the carriage. "What happened?" Gu Shaoshun asked as she looked ahead. She saw a person lying down on the mountain road in front of the carriage. The person was hugging his knees and looked like he was in great pain. That person screamed, My leg was broken by you guys. Broken. This." Lu Quan wanted to go down to take a look, but Gu Shaoshun stopped him. This was a scammer. Back when he was a bully in the countryside, Gu Shaoshun had seen a lot of such tricks. They could fool others but not him. Seeing that Gu Shaoshun and Gu Yuxing did not respond, the man's eyes flashed and he continued to wail. My leg," Lu Quan whispered. "It's not good for him to just lie there." Gu Shaoshun shouted, "Run him over." That person looked at Gu Shaoshun and saw Gu Shaoshun take the whip from Lu Quan's hand and whip the horse. The horse was in pain and neighed twice as it galloped forward. That person saw that the situation was not good and did not care about the scam anymore. He quickly got up from the ground and ran away. Lu Quan was stunned. How could it be like this? The matter was far from over. That person saw that the scam was not working. His eyes turned cold and he actually used his qinggong to fly towards the carriage. He directly jumped over the roof of the carriage and pulled Gu Shaoshun down from the carriage. "Shaoshun." Lu Quan was shocked and quickly reached out to pull on the reins. However, that person seemed to have expected Lu Quan to do so. Before he got down from the carriage, he slapped the horse with his hand. This slap was infused with internal energy and it hurt the horse badly. No matter how Lu Quan pulled on the reins, it could not stop. After Gu Shaoshun was held hostage by that person, he was very unhappy and pulled away the other person's hand that was grabbing his collar. "What are you doing?" Two big men pulling each other. What a scandal. Don't you have any shame? The corner of that person's mouth twitched. "You're a big man? Have you grown hair?" Gu Shaoshun said unhappily, "Do you want to see?" That person said, "If you listen to me, I'll let you suffer less." Gu Shaoshun retorted, "Why don't you listen to me and let you suffer less?" That person, did he mean it the way he understood it? How old was this kid? How could he speak like a hooligan? Also, how could he tell that he was the one below? Cough. Forget it. This was an important hostage. Before the Empress Dowager returned to the Zhuang family, the hostage had to be unharmed. That person decided to endure it. He grabbed Gu Shaoshun's shoulder and was about to take Gu Shaoshun away. Unexpectedly, Gu Shaoshun wrapped one arm around him and broke free from his grasp. Gu Shaoshun broke into a run. Want to run? It's not that easy. That person snorted coldly and lightly jumped up to chase after him. However, just as he was about to use his qinggong and leap up, a silver needle suddenly flew from behind him and pierced through his thigh with a whoosh. He groaned and fell from the air. He looked at his thigh in disbelief and then looked at the silver needle stuck in the ground. His expression changed greatly. Tang Hua needle? Someone from the Tang sect? How could someone from the Tang sect appear in the Zhao country? And they were secretly protecting that kid? Wasn't he just a rash kid from the countryside? How could he be related to the Tang sect, which was not part of the 6 countries? That person didn't dare to chase after Gu Shaoshun anymore. He gritted his teeth and left. After a while, Master Lu and Nan Xiang slowly walked out from behind the big tree. Master Lu walked over and wrapped his hand in a handkerchief. He pulled out the Tanghua needle from the ground and said to Nan Xiang, "Wife, you like that kid that much? You even used Tanghua needles. I haven't seen you use Tanghua needles in 10 years." Nan Xiang reached out her hand wearing a silver glove and took the Tanghua needle. "It's all right. It's quite interesting." Gu Shaoshan ran forward as if he was reincarnated and finally caught up with the carriage that was parked at the foot of the mountain. He looked back and saw that the other party couldn't catch up. He couldn't help but laugh with his hands on his hips. "Ha ha ha. It's still this young master who runs faster. If you have the ability, then chase after me. Chase after me." His mouth was full of arrogance, but his body was trembling. He jumped onto the carriage. "Uncle Lu, let's go quickly." "Oh, okay." Lu Quan increased the speed of the carriage to the maximum and quickly returned to Bai Shui Alley. The assassin who came to capture Gu Shaoshan didn't make it back to report to Grand Tutor Zhuang. Although it was only a small silver needle, the Tang sect's hidden weapon could take a life. This was a mistake in strategy. He originally thought that he had picked the weakest persimmon, but he didn't expect that the persimmon had a durian that could kill people. Grand Tutor Zhuang waited for a long time but didn't hear a reply from his subordinates. He guessed that he had made a bad start. He deeply furrowed his brows. This won't do, that won't do. Do we really have to directly capture the Empress Dowager? While Grand Tutor Zhuang was racking his brains to get close to the Empress Dowager, someone had effortlessly seen her. Marquis Xianping had come to find Xiao Lulang again. He had thought about it. Using a frightening method to test him was not advisable, but he could first think of a way to stay with him. Today, he wasn't looking for Xiao Lulang. He was looking for his daughter-in-law, whom he had never met. He was really smart. "Chongjing, knock on the door," he ordered. Chongjing let out an "oh" and walked forward. She raised her hand to knock on the door. Before she could knock, the door opened from the inside with a creak. The old chancellor and the old madam walked out. The two were going next door to play cards. Just as they reached the door, the old chancellor stopped. He saw Marquis Xianping. Marquis Xianping naturally also saw him. Seeing him come out from Xiao Liulong's courtyard, Marquis Xianping wasn't too surprised. After all, he knew that he lived next door. No matter if Xiao Lulang was Ahang or not, the old chancellor and him were neighbors. But the person beside him, Marquis Xianping, looked at the old madam. A trace of astonishment flashed through his eyes. The old chancellor wanted to close the door, but it was too late. He could only quickly move a step to the side and block the old madam behind him. Unfortunately, Marquis Xianping had already seen it. Marquis Xianping narrowed his eyes dangerously. The aura around his body instantly turned cold. "Old madam, why are you blocking me?" "Old chancellor, don't speak." Marquis Xianping clenched his fists little by little, making a cracking sound. The old chancellor pondered. "It's over, it's over. What I'm afraid of comes." This guy found Zhuang Jin's. Imperial tutor Zhuang left, but Marquis Xianping came. This is going to ascend to heaven. Imperial tutor Zhuang only wanted to make use of Zhuang Jin's, but Marquis Xianping had an irreconcilable hatred with Zhuang Jin's. "Brother Hua, sister-in-law Hua, why aren't you guys here yet? We're just waiting for you too." Next door, Auntie Zhang's shout came from the room next door. Marquis Xianping's gaze swept across the old chancellor and the old madam's face with a faint smile. "Brother Hua, sister-in-law Hua? It seems that I have recognized wrongly. Also, the Empress Dowager is in the temporary imperial residence. Why would she come here?" The old chancellor secretly heaved a sigh of relief. After he heaved a sigh of relief, he felt that something was wrong. Marquis Xianping wasn't so stubborn? Marquis Xianping sneered. His voice was like a cold pool. Someone disguised herself as the Empress Dowager. "Chongjing, kill her." Digression, Empress Dowager. It's too difficult for me. Third watch, aren't you surprised? The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, Please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642/896428826/11278385. HTML Genius remembers this website's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 265. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. The old chancellor's temples suddenly twitched. It's fine if Marquis Xianping doesn't come, but if he does, he will kill. How did he really recognize the wrong person? He was obviously making the best of it. Empress Dowager Zhuang was recuperating in the temporary imperial residence, so who could say that the woman outside who was his wife was the Empress Dowager? The emperor didn't want to see Empress Dowager Zhuang anymore, but the royal family's reputation was bound together. Even if it was to protect the royal family's reputation and decorum, the emperor wouldn't admit that the woman outside who made the former emperor a cuckold was Empress Dowager Zhuang. Besides, the emperor originally wanted to get rid of Empress Dowager Zhuang, but the emperor had more scruples than Marquis Xianping. In addition, Empress Dowager Zhuang also had something that the emperor always wanted. If Marquis Xianping really killed Empress Dowager Zhuang, the emperor would be angry and regret that he didn't get what he wanted, but he wouldn't really take Marquis Xianping's life. Alright, it wasn't his illusion last time. Marquis Xianping was indeed cunning enough. People always said that Marquis Xianping often won battles because he relied on his bravery. In fact, they were all wrong. Bravery was important, but if Marquis Xianping didn't have any brains, he would have been fooled by the enemy. The old chancellor belonged to the party who was caught. On one hand, he had to endure the confusion brought by his guilty conscience, and on the other hand, he couldn't really let Zhuang Jin be killed. He hurriedly said, "Can't they look alike? What's there to pretend to be?" Marquis Xianping sneered, "Heh, it's fine if my illegitimate son looks like my legitimate son, but what's the relationship between this person and the one in the palace? Sisters? The old chancellor was speechless for a moment. Can't you just be a martial artist and be a quiet martial artist? As a military general, your brain and mouth are so sharp that the civil officials will have no way out. The old chancellor expressed that he could still stay low and was determined not to lose to a military general. He looked at Marquis Xianping and said sternly, "You can't kill her. She's Liulong's grand-aunt." Pausing for a moment, he recalled that his grand-aunt was his grandfather's sister. Naturally, Marquis Xianping didn't have such an aunt. The old chancellor's stroke of genius came to him, his elder brother's father's aunt. This big brother referred to the eldest son of Chen Yun's mother and her ex-husband. If she was really his big brother's grand-aunt, then as his half-brother, Xiao Lulang also called her grand-aunt. What's more, that big brother treated Lulang very well. It was not wrong for Xiao Lulang to take care of his big brother's grand-aunt in her old age. Marquis Xianping snorted, "Do you think this marquis will believe you?" The old chancellor clasped his fingers. "It's absolutely true. If it's a lie, may the heavens strike you with lightning." Rumble. A clap of thunder exploded in the sky. "Old chancellor, are you not giving me any face at all?" It was about to rain. The sky was gloomy and dark clouds rolled. It was as if there was a sea of primal chaos under the sky. The atmosphere suddenly became oppressive. Chong Jing wasn't in a hurry to make a move. It wasn't because he was intimidated by the old chancellor's words but because his marbles were gone. He lowered his head and rummaged through his pocket to find his marbles. Marquis Xianping looked at the old granny and the old granny also looked at him. Their eyes met. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky. Their faces were also flickering in the night sky and the lightning. Even if a dragon enters a shallow abyss, it is still a dragon. Even if she had lost her memory and was wearing a coarse hemp garment, the old granny's aura wasn't any weaker than Marquise Xianping's. In fact, under the confrontation of their gazes, there was a faint aura that belonged to Zhuang Jin's. The old chancellor felt a deep headache. He said to Marquise Xianping, "Listen to me. Perhaps what happened back then was a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding? What misunderstanding? What happened back then? Marquise Xianping and the old granny almost spoke at the same time. This. The old chancellor looked at the old granny and then looked at Marquise Xianping. He used his hand to block and said softly, "She doesn't remember anything." "Don't be like this." Marquise Xianping said coldly, "She doesn't remember, but I do. The hatred of killing my son is absolutely irreconcilable." The old chancellor scratched his head. How can that be called killing? At most, it was poisoning, right? It was something that happened when A Heng was 4 or 5 years old. She was poisoned in the palace. It was said that it was done by the Empress Dowager. Marquise Xianping said coldly, "Not killing is not considered killing? My son not dying is my son's luck. It's not an excuse for her to absolve herself." "I harmed your son?" The old granny couldn't remember, but she wasn't in a hurry to absolve herself. Because she often felt that she was indeed full of evil tricks. Maybe she really was an evil person in the past. Marquise Xianping didn't care why Zhuang Jin appeared here. He didn't need to ask the reason or the process. He only needed the result. That is, he wants to kill Zhuang Jin. "Chongjing, are you deaf or stupid? Do you not understand human language? Why aren't you doing it?" "Found it." Chongjing dug out the marble that fell into her pocket and put it into another pocket that was still intact. Her expression turned cold and she switched to killer mode in a second. "Lulang, you have returned." The old chancellor looked behind Marquise Xianping. Taking advantage of Marquise Xianping's slight pause, he pulled the old granny's hand and returned to the house. Closing the door with a bang, he locked the door. "Leave through the back door," he said to the old granny. "Did something happen?" Yao Shi heard the movement and came out. Nothing. Quickly return to the house." The old chancellor waved his hand at Yao Shi. Marquise Xianping's target was Zhuang Jin. He wouldn't kill the innocent. He wasn't worried about Yao Shi's safety. He pulled the old granny and escaped through the back door. The most important thing was to quickly find Lulang. Only he could stop Marquise Xianping. But just as the two crossed the threshold of the back door, they saw Chongjing standing in front of them with a murderous look. Old Chancellor took in a breath of cold air. They couldn't go back. Marquise Xianping was blocking the front door. "That little brother, can we discuss?" The old Chancellor smiled and suddenly rushed over to hug Chongjing. He said to the old granny, "Quickly go. Go find Lulang. He's at Lin Brat's house." Lin Chengye's house was nearby and it would only take a quarter of an hour to walk there. But how could the old chancellor hug an assassin like Chongjing? Chongjing lifted him up. Chongjing wasn't interested in people other than his target. After throwing the old chancellor to the side, he stretched out his hand to kill the old granny. He only used his hand to grab the back of the old granny's neck and with a gentle twist, he actually broke her neck. At the crucial moment, a small figure flashed over and blocked in front of the old granny. He raised his small arm and blocked Chongjing's arm. Chongjing used his right hand, but no one knew that his dominant hand was actually his left hand. He raised his left hand and slapped towards Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao received this palm forcefully and the huge force forced the two of them to move back 2 steps. Chongjing looked at Gu Jiao in astonishment and then looked at his own hand. He was actually able to receive a palm from him? Gu Jiao thought, ugh. Half of my arm is going to be numb. Where did this expert come from? Great-aunt, grand-uncle, you two leave first. Gu Jiao stopped Chongjing and said to the two of them. The old chancellor didn't care about being pretentious and courteous as he pulled the old granny and sprinted towards Lin Chengye's residence. Of course, he didn't forget to turn back and remind Chong Jing, she's the daughter-in-law of Marquis Xian Ping. You're not allowed to use your true strength. His words were effective as Chong Jing's murderous aura was reduced by half. Chong Jing's martial arts was much higher than those experts in the martial arts school. Even if his murderous aura was reduced by half, it wasn't that easy for Gu Jiao to defeat him. Of course, it was also slightly difficult for Chong Jing to get rid of Gu Jiao. The two of them started to fight intensely. The old chancellor brought the old granny and sprinted non-stop. The reason why they could still run at this age was mainly due to Gu Jiao's good daily care. Their bodies were much more robust than before, and the old chancellor even faintly felt that they had more black hair. However, misfortunes never come singly. Even though they got rid of Marquis Xian Ping and Chong Jing's evil clutches, they encountered a group of masked men in black. The men in black blocked the entrance of the alley. In order to get to Lin Chengye's house as soon as possible, the old chancellor brought the old granny to take a shortcut which was secluded and almost no one passed by. This also meant that there weren't any officials patrolling nearby. It's over. It's over. This is what it means to have a wolf in the front and a tiger in the back. The other party didn't come with good intentions. It didn't seem good whether they were captured by them or killed by Chong Jing when they got back. Who are you people? The old chancellor asked vigilantly. More than 10 men in black opened up a path with a swoosh. There was a carriage parked behind them. Hearing the question, the curtain of the carriage was lifted and Grand Tutor Zhuang walked down from the carriage. Grand Tutor Zhuang put his hands in his wide sleeves with an arrogant and calm expression. He strolled to the front of the two people and took a glance at the old granny and the old chancellor. His gaze turned cold. So it's you. No wonder he felt something was wrong when he saw them at Jade Water Alley last time. It turned out that they were acquaintances. No wonder he closed the door in a panic, and no wonder he didn't have the face to see people. Why are you here? And with the Empress Dowager? Before Chancellor Hua resigned, he fought with the Empress Dowager to the death. They fought for 2 dynasties from the reign of the late emperor to the current emperor. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they were sworn enemies. Yet they appeared at the same place at the same time and were even close. There should be something he didn't know, but he couldn't think about it in detail now. The most important thing now was to bring the Empress Dowager back. Grand Tutor Zhuang's gaze landed on the old chancellor's hand which was holding the old granny's wrist. His expression changed and he shouted sternly, "Impudent! Is the Empress Dowager's phoenix body something an old man like you can profane? Not to mention pulling her wrist, he couldn't even pull the corner of her clothes." The old chancellor withdrew his hand with a guilty conscience. Grand Tutor Zhuang didn't dare to speak sternly to the old granny. He said gently, "Sister, go back with big brother." The old granny looked at him with disdain. "Get lost." Grand Tutor Zhuang was speechless. Grand Tutor Zhuang took a deep breath and told himself that the Empress Dowager had only lost her memory. Her words weren't her original intention, and it wasn't the Empress Dowager's imperial decree. When the Empress Dowager remembered her identity, she would forgive him for what he had done today. He turned his head and ordered the man in black, "Take the Empress away. That person." He glanced at the old chancellor. "Get rid of him." The Empress Dowager of a country actually had an affair with a man outside. Once this kind of scandal was spread out, facing the public censure would be a light punishment. Her reputation and status would probably be lost. The emperor was worried about not having an excuse to pull the Empress Dowager down, so he couldn't give the emperor any chance. The old chancellor said coldly, "Zhuang Boyong, you're crazy. Are you going to kill people on the streets?" Each and every one of them really didn't take human life seriously. Grand Tutor Zhuang said indifferently, "You tried to assassinate the Empress Dowager. I killed the assassin, so what crime am I guilty of?" After saying that, he made a killing gesture and ignored the old chancellor. On the other side, Gu Jiao and Chong Jing's 4 hands were tied together. This fellow's martial arts was too high. Gu Jiao's strength had only recovered to 30% of her previous life strength, so she really couldn't beat this fellow to death. Suddenly, Gu Jiao saw the pearls in his pocket. She remembered the first time she saw him, he seemed to be looking for pearls on the ground. Gu Jiao's eyes flashed and she used one knee to hit his lower abdomen. Chong Jing instinctively freed his hand to block her attack. Gu Jiao freed her hand and tore off his pocket. His marbles rolled all over the ground. Chong Jing thought, his marbles. Chong Jing ignored Gu Jiao and went to pick up the pearls. Gu Jiao hurriedly chased after the old chancellor and her grandaunt. It was as if a hole was torn in the sky and it started to rain heavily. The old madam and the old chancellor were separated by the men in black. The men in black didn't dare to be rough with the old madam and only tried their best to pull her into the carriage. They weren't so polite to the old chancellor. The old chancellor was kicked to the ground and was in so much pain that he almost couldn't straighten his body. "Stop," the old madam said to Grand Tutor Zhuang. Grand Tutor Zhuang turned a deaf ear. "Empress, please get on the carriage." One of the men in black pulled out his sword and slashed towards the old chancellor's neck. Suddenly, a silver needle pierced through the thick curtain of rain and pierced the wrist of the assassin in black. The assassin in black felt a pain in his wrist and the long sword in his hand fell to the ground. The rest of the people saw the situation and looked towards Gu Jiao. The next moment, they waved the long sword in their hands and slashed towards Gu Jiao. It was raining heavily. Gu Jiao shuttled back and forth in the rain of swords as several people surrounded her. Gu Jiao leaped and pressed down on the head of one of the men in black. She rolled over his back and pulled out the sword at his waist and cut off a long sword that was swinging towards her. She held the sword and knelt on the ground with one knee. Her eyes were like torches and her whole body was emitting a terrifying murderous aura. These people weren't as skilled as Chong Jing. She quickly opened up a path and arrived behind the old madam. However, the moment she pulled the old madam, one of the men in black placed his long sword on the old chancellor's neck. "Don't move. Otherwise, I'll kill him." Gu Jiao suddenly threw the dagger in her hand and smashed that man's long sword. Gu Jiao took a few steps forward and caught the dagger that fell from the air. She kicked the man to kneel on the ground and grabbed his hair. She could cut his throat with just one slash. Gu Jiao had been here for a long time and had been very restrained. She didn't use weapons and only used silver needles that didn't have blood because blood would make her excited. Her godfather said that she was the perfect tool to kill. Probably so. She did surgeries not to save people's lives but for her own cultivation. She had to control her ruthlessness. However, her blade had already cut the skin of the other party and fine blood slid down the blade along with the rain. The ruthlessness in Gu Jiao's body began to stir and her hand that was holding the dagger began to tremble. As long as she killed one, she would kill the last one. "Jiao Jiao." Suddenly, the old madam grabbed her hand and wrapped the back of her young hand with her palm that had lost its luster due to old age and was covered with wrinkles. "Jiao Jiao, be a good girl and come to Grandaunt." The voice was clearly in her ears, but it seemed to come from above the water. "Jiao Jiao. Jiao Jiao." The old madam called her again and again. Gu Jiao finally suppressed the ruthlessness in her blood. The red blood in her eyes faded little by little. She turned her head and threw away the dagger in her hand. "Grandaunt, I'll take you home." The old madam nodded. "Okay." Grand Tutor Zhuang was directly shocked by Gu Jiao's murderous aura and forgot to stop her. The men in black also looked at Gu Jiao with fear. They pointed their swords at her while carefully avoiding her. Her strength wasn't only in her skills, it was also in her aura that wanted to kill everyone in the world. It was simply too terrifying. Therefore, even if Gu Jiao was following beside the old madam and was obediently letting the old madam hold her hand, no one dared to act rashly. The change happened the moment they turned to leave. The rain was too heavy and a building that was on the verge of collapse couldn't withstand the washing of the heavy rain. The beams snapped and the huge roof tilted down, smashing towards Gu Jiao and the old madam. Everything happened too quickly and old chancellor didn't even have time to pounce over and knock them away. Gu Jiao's ears twitched and she raised her head. The huge roof came pressing down like a glacier and even she couldn't push it away. She turned around and protected her grandaunt's waist with one hand and the back of her head with the other. She then used her elbow to fall to the ground. She protected her grandaunt under her body. The old madam looked at the roof, pressing down on Gu Jiao, and she couldn't push Gu Jiao away. She could only stretch out her hand to protect Gu Jiao's head. She protected Gu Jiao's head, but she couldn't protect her own head. A wooden plank suddenly smashed onto her forehead. Empress Dowager, Zhuang Jin's. She felt a sharp pain in her head, and a hole seemed to have opened up in the depths of her mind. Countless strange yet familiar images rushed out along with her memories. Jin's, tell father, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a bird. Why? I can fly. That way I won't have to be trapped in the house all day. Jin's, from today onwards, you are the Empress of Great Zhao Empire. Zhan and the Empress will be together for 100 years and be united forever. His Majesty is resting in Wanfu Palace. Her Majesty doesn't have to wait for His Majesty to admire the moon. His Majesty will come again at the beginning of next month. Jin's. In this lifetime, have you ever loved Zhen? Long live Empress Dowager. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/8964286/112759247. HTML Genius remembers this website's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 266. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. When Gu Jiao woke up, she found herself lying on a dry bed. She raised her head and looked around. She recognized that this was her boudoir in the medical center. She tried to move her body and found that she was in pain all over. You're awake. Xiao Liulong's voice sounded softly above her head. However, she was lying on her stomach and her neck was limited, so she couldn't see him for a while. Don't move, I'll come over. Xiao Lulang took a few steps forward and sat down on the edge of the bed beside her. She was sweating a little, so Xiao Lulang took a handkerchief and wiped her forehead carefully. How do you feel? He asked. Does it hurt? It doesn't hurt, she said. The physical pain couldn't do anything to her. She was used to it and didn't feel anything. She looked around. Xiao Lulang looked at her restless appearance and couldn't help but speak with a stern tone. You're seriously injured, don't move. His tone was stern, but his eyes were full of worry. He was originally tutoring Lin Qingye and Feng Lin at Lin Qingye's house today. Suddenly, there was a storm, so he felt uneasy. Sure enough, Lu Quan came over not long after and said that something happened to Gu Jiao and the old lady. Lu Quan had also just arrived home. After experiencing Gu Xiaoshun being kidnapped, he hadn't recovered from the incident yet when Gu Jiao and the old lady got into trouble. The person was sent to the medical center by Marquis Xian Ping. Gu Jiao and the old lady were injured and both fainted on the spot. Marquis Xian Ping originally came with Chong Jing to kill the old lady, but he saw Grand Tutor Zhuang. With Grand Tutor Zhuang there, they naturally couldn't kill them. When Marquis Xian Ping arrived, Gu Jiao and the old lady had already been dug out from under the ruins. Two large groups of people surrounded the old lady, but Gu Jiao only had the old chancellor by her side. Marquis Xian Ping sent Gu Jiao, who was covered in blood, to the clinic. The matriarch's injuries were also not optimistic. Her head was bleeding profusely. Imperial Tutor Zhuang was worried that she would not be able to hold on until she returned home, so he followed Marquis Xian Ping and brought her to the medical hall. Gu Jiao's back was hit by the roof. She almost broke her spine. Dr. Song said that if her spine is broken, she will face the risk of being paralyzed and may not be able to stand up for the rest of her life. Hearing this, Xiao Lulang broke out in a cold sweat. However, even though her spine was saved, her back and legs were swollen and bruised, as well as scratches from wood chips. Then there was her elbow. When she fell while protecting the old lady, she should have used at least one hand to support herself. However, she used one hand to protect her grey tant's waist and the other hand to protect her grey tant's head. In the end, her knees and elbows hit the ground and they were all swollen. But she actually said that it didn't hurt and even moved around. Xiao Lulang felt that as her husband, even if it was only in name, he should reason with her. He could no longer ignore his own safety and couldn't leave her to recuperate. Gu Jiao looked around blankly. Where's Great Aunt? All of Xiao Liulong's words were stuck in his throat. In another room, an old doctor surnamed Lu was bandaging the old lady's head injury. The old lady was still unconscious, but her breathing was not as weak as before. Is she all right? Imperial Tutor Zhuang asked. Old Dr. Lu did not know the other party's identity, but he could tell that they were either rich or noble. He cupped his hands in salute and said, replying to this master, this old madam's injuries are not serious. The wound is not deep and the bleeding has stopped. She will be fine once she wakes up. On the other hand, our Miss Gu's injuries were too serious. He could not bear to look at her. Imperial Tutor Zhuang felt relieved and gave old Dr. Lu a silver ingot. You may leave. Yes. Old Dr. Lu took his medicine box and left. Imperial Tutor Zhuang stood guard by the bed. Thinking about what had just happened, he also felt a burst of fear. He was so worried that the Empress Dowager had suffered a serious injury. Imperial Tutor Zhuang did not wait for too long before the person on the bed slowly opened her eyes. Imperial Tutor Zhuang quickly stood up and looked at her excitedly. Younger sister, you're awake? He thought that she had not recovered her memories yet, so it would be easier for her to accept this form of address. But when he met the other party's eyes, his entire person froze. Even though she was ill, her eyes were fierce and domineering. It was a gaze that belonged only to Zhuang Jin's. Imperial Tutor Zhuang took a step back and straightened his clothes. He reached out his hands and his legs gradually moved back. He cupped his hands in salute. This official respectfully welcomes the Empress Dowager. From now on, there was no great aunt in the world, only the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager sat in Imperial Tutor Zhuang's carriage and set off for the Zhuang residence. Before leaving, Imperial Tutor Zhuang had the imperial bodyguards go to the residence to inform the family. The whole family, Imperial Tutor Zhuang's eldest son Zhuang Ping, his second son Zhuang Zhou, his third concubine-born son Zhuang Mu, his eldest daughter-in-law Madame Zhen, his second daughter-in-law Madame Feng, his third daughter-in-law Madame Tan, and his children, including Royal Prince N, all stood outside the residence in the wind and rain, waiting for the Empress Dowager's arrival. The carriage stopped outside the residence, swaying in the wind and rain. Zhuang Ping was the first to kneel down. After he knelt down, everyone present knelt down. He cupped his hands in salute and said loudly, "This official respectfully welcomes the Empress Dowager. Long live the Empress Dowager." Everyone kowtowed. "Respectfully welcomes the Empress Dowager. Long live the Empress Dowager." Imperial Tutor Zhuang came down from another carriage and personally held an umbrella for the Empress Dowager against the wind and rain. The Empress Dowager was still wearing the clothes from Bisui Alley, but this did not affect her aura. These people were all her family, but they were all kneeling at her feet. She glanced at the crowd and said, "You may rise." "Thank you, Empress Dowager." Everyone respectfully responded and stood up in a well-behaved manner. Everyone's clothes were soaked, but even the youngest 3-year-old child did not dare to make a sound. Everyone knew that the Empress Dowager valued rules. Imperial Tutor Zhuang smiled and said, "Quickly enter the house. The rain is heavy. The Empress Dowager is injured and should not be drenched in the rain." Imperial Tutor Zhuang walked into the Zhuang residence and entered the courtyard that the Zhuang family had carefully prepared for her. This was Zhuang Jin's courtyard before she was married. Every blade of grass, Every tree, every flower, and every tree inside was arranged according to the way she was before she was married. Decades had passed, and it still maintained its original appearance. Empress Dowager Zhuang did not even lift her eyelids as she walked up the steps. However, when she passed by a crabapple tree, she took a second look and felt that there was a child missing from the tree. She entered the house. In the Zhuang family, only Imperial Tutor Zhuang, Royal Prince N, and their trusted subordinates knew about the Empress Dowager Zhuang's leprosy. Therefore, Imperial Tutor Zhuang did not even call his own son and only brought Royal Prince N. After the three of them entered the house, Imperial Tutor Zhuang called two maids over. The people around the Empress Dowager are all in the summer palace. These are the servants that Hang Er selected. They will stay by the Empress Dowager's side to serve her. No need. Go out. Empress Dowager Zhuang sat down and waved her hand. I don't need anyone to serve me. The grandmother and granddaughter were both stunned. Empress Dowager Zhuang was very formal and usually had at least 7 or 8 palace maids and eunuchs serving her. Empress Dowager Zhuang reached for the teapot on the table and poured tea. Imperial Tutor Zhuang frowned and looked at the two maids. What are you doing? Serve tea to the Empress Dowager. The two maids hurried forward to pour tea. Empress Dowager Zhuang slammed the teapot on the table with a trace of impatience. The two maids were so scared that they fell to their knees. Empress Dowager Zhuang panicked for a moment. She seemed to understand that her reaction was not appropriate for her status. She said lightly, "Pour it." "Yes." The two maids looked at each other and stood up. One poured tea and the other served snacks. Empress Dowager Zhuang had no appetite. She took a sip of tea and let them leave. What happened during this period of time? Empress Dowager Zhuang asked solemnly. Imperial Tutor Zhuang and Commandery Prince An exchanged a look and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. It was Commandery Prince An who spoke. You don't remember what happened? Empress Dowager Zhuang pressed her aching temples. I only remember that I had leprosy and was forced to be sent to Leprosy Mountain. I escaped when no one was paying attention. After that, I seem to have gone to many places. In the end, I fainted from hunger. I don't remember what happened after that. Where did you find me? How many days was I unconscious? Unconscious? How many days? The two maids couldn't help but gasp. Empress Dowager Zhuang remembered the past, but she didn't remember what happened during this period of time. Her memory stopped at the day she fainted in the village. Thinking of something, Empress Dowager Zhuang said, "By the way, how is my leprosy?" Commandery Prince An said, "Your leprosy? You didn't have leprosy. It was a misdiagnosis." Imperial Tutor Zhuang interrupted Commandery Prince An. Misdiagnosis. Empress Dowager Zhuang frowned. Imperial Tutor Zhuang said seriously, "Yes, it was a misdiagnosis. To be honest, you have been missing for more than a year. If you really had leprosy, it wouldn't be like this." Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at her hands and touched her face. "I clearly remember that there were symptoms." Imperial Tutor Zhuang said, "Leprosy can't be cured. You only have similar symptoms, but you don't have leprosy. In Zhao country, leprosy couldn't be cured. It was said that only the most powerful Yen country had the means to cure leprosy." Empress Dowager Zhuang paused and said, "Then where was I when I was missing?" Imperial Tutor Zhuang said, "The Empress Dowager was controlled by His Majesty's people. I don't know what drug they gave the Empress Dowager, but the Empress Dowager lost her memory. This official went to see the Empress Dowager several times, but was mercilessly blocked by them. Today, this official had no choice but to send a secret guard to rob her. As a result, the Empress Dowager was injured." Commandery Prince An wanted to say something but stopped. "Great Aunt! Great Aunt!" Zhuang Mengdie's voice suddenly came from outside the room. Empress Dowager Zhuang's expression became absent-minded again. A name flashed through her mind. It seemed that someone had called her that before, but she couldn't remember the name. "It's Meng Dai." Imperial Tutor Zhuang smiled. She should be with her sister. "Empress Dowager, do you want to see them?" Meng Dai. The one who called her grand-aunt was Meng Dai? That's right. Otherwise, which girl would call her grand-aunt? Empress Dowager Zhuang nodded. Come in. Zhuang Meng Dai pushed open the door and happily entered the room. Great-aunt. Call her Empress Dowager. Imperial Tutor Zhuang reminded with a serious face. Oh. Zhuang Meng Dai reluctantly responded and respectfully bowed. Meng Dai greets the Empress Dowager. Zhuang Yueshi, who entered the room one after the other, also bowed. Yueshi greets the Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager Zhuang nodded. Zhuang Meng Dai sat down beside Empress Dowager Zhuang, held her arm, and said intimately, Empress Dowager, I miss you so much. Why didn't you summon me? Imperial Tutor Zhuang's face was stern. Don't be unruly. Zhuang Meng Dai snorted. Empress Dowager Zhuang loved the children of the Zhuang family very much. First, she didn't have children of her own. Second, these children were really good at making people happy. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at Zhuang Meng Dai beside her and then looked at the gentle and demure Zhuang Yueshi. In fact, Empress Dowager Zhuang used to dote on Zhuang Meng Dai. A crying child would get milk. Zhuang Meng Dai knew how to act spoiled, so she naturally got more love. But today, Empress Dowager Zhuang inexplicably wanted to get closer to the quiet Zhuang Yueshi. She looked at Zhuang Yueshi in a daze. Imperial Tutor Zhuang gave Zhuang Yueshi a look. Zhuang Yueshi understood and walked over to sit on the other side of Empress Dowager Zhuang. Empress Dowager Zhuang raised her hand and touched Zhuang Yueshi's left cheek. No more. No more. Zhuang Meng Dai asked strangely. Yes, no more. Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't know herself. Medical Center. Gu Jiao stood quietly at the entrance of the hall. She was still injured and the cold wind blew in, carrying with it the cold rain. Xiao Lulang held an umbrella above her head. Great-aunt left. Xiao Lulang said. Will she come back? Gu Jiao looked back and stared at him. At this moment, she finally had the naivety and hesitation of a 15-year-old girl. But Xiao Lulang couldn't feel comforted. Xiao Lulang sighed, looked down and said in a low voice, Jiao Jiao, she is no longer great-aunt. She won't be great-aunt in the future. Gu Jiao stared blankly at the pouring rain. Her small body was a little lonely. Xiao Lulang put down the umbrella, turned her body and gently pressed her into his arms. Her head rested on his firm chest. She shook her head, opened her eyes and said seriously, I don't feel bad. Xiao Liulong's hand around her waist tightened. His large palm gently held her head. Yes. In the courtyard, Gu Yan was sleeping. Suddenly, he woke up and sat up. Yao She was given a fright by him. What is it? Gu Yan didn't speak. A drop of tear fell from his eyes. He wiped the tear with his fingertips and looked at it. Yao She also saw it. She was surprised. Why are you crying? Gu Yan, I am not crying. These weren't his tears. They were Jiao Jiao's tears. Digression. Blade Light Mail. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826/112756508. HTML Genius. 1 second. Remember this website address. www.zhbqg.com. Biku Gur mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 267. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. Empress Dowager Zhuang talked with the Zhuang family for a while and felt tired. Grand Tutor Zhuang left with the children. He let Zhuang Mengdai and Zhuang Yueshi go back to their own courtyards to rest. Then he said to Prince En, "Come to my study." Yes. Prince En went to Grand Tutor Zhuang's study. There was an oil lamp in the study. The light was not too dim but not too bright. The wind and rain outside continued without any signs of abating. Grand Tutor Zhuang waved his hand and dismissed the servants. Only he and Prince En were left in the room. The Empress Dowager was found, but Grand Tutor Zhuang found that his grandson was not as excited as he imagined. In fact, he had been like this since the court examination. This made Grand Tutor Zhuang suspect that Prince En lost his confidence after one failure. Grand Tutor Zhuang said sincerely, "One imperial examination is no big deal. In the future, you will have a meteoric rise in the officialdom. You can still beat him. To be exact, you will definitely beat him." Life was very long. A small victory or loss was nothing. The most important thing was to look forward and not look back. The Empress Dowager and the Zhuang family are behind you. Prince En did not do this because of the imperial examination results. At least not completely. In his opinion, he lost to Xiao Lulang because the emperor wanted to suppress the Zhuang family. It was reasonable for him to lose. But on the day they paraded through the streets on horseback, Gu Jiao treated Xiao Lulang differently from how she treated him. This truly hurt his heart. However, he could not say this. "I understand. If there is nothing else, I will leave first." He bowed and was about to leave. The Empress Dowager's matter. Grand Tutor Zhuang stopped Prince En. His eyes were full of meaning. "You should know what to say and what not to say." Prince En asked numbly, "Grandfather, what do you think should be said and what not to say?" Grand Tutor Zhuang was dissatisfied with his attitude. His eyes turned cold. "You are young. I allow you to be a little emotional. But don't go overboard." Royal Prince En laughed at himself. Is the Empress Dowager really controlled by His Majesty? Then why did your Majesty personally go to Zhongnan to find her? Grand Tutor Zhuang said, "Xiao Lulang has thrown in his lot with Marquis Xianping. Marquis Xianping is the Emperor's trusted official. Who knows if the Emperor's trip to Zhongnan is a smokescreen to fool us?" Royal Prince En sneered. She cured the Empress Dowager's leprosy. She even saved the Empress Dowager's life. Does grandfather think that she is using her? Grand Tutor Zhuang said in a heavy voice, "The Empress Dowager does not have leprosy. Leprosy cannot be cured. Also, there was no need to save her. They just needed the Empress Dowager and couldn't let anything happen to her. If it was any of the Zhuang Manor's guards, they would do the same. They are all willing to die for the Empress Dowager." Royal Prince En did not argue with his grandfather anymore. He lowered his eyes. If grandfather says so, then so be it. With that, he bowed and turned to leave. Grand Tutor Zhuang looked at his back and said, "Remember your status. Don't let your emotions affect your decisions." "Got it." A low reply came from him in the night. The rain was very heavy. Gu Jiao's injury was also very serious. She couldn't return to Bishui Alley. Tonight, she would rest in the small courtyard of the medical center. Dr. Song boiled a bowl of calming soup. Xiao Lulang fed it to her. The medicine took effect and she quickly fell asleep. Marquis Xianping was under the eaves. Beside him was the depressed old chancellor. Chong Jing was playing with marbles on the floor at the end of the corridor. Marquis Xuanping's hands were in his wide sleeves. He unconsciously frowned and looked at the heavy rain that was like the Milky Way. So the Empress Dowager fainted in front of Lulang and that girl's house? "I heard so," the old chancellor said dejectedly. Marquis Xianping said, "Then do they know it's the Empress Dowager?" The old chancellor looked at him coldly. "You are setting a trap for me." Marquis Xuanping's expression didn't change. "I didn't." This old guy looked like he had lost his soul after losing his wife. He thought it would be easy to get information out of him. Of course, that girl wouldn't know it's the Empress Dowager. The real Xiao Lulang also wouldn't know the Empress Dowager. Only Ah Heng would know. So if the old chancellor hesitated and said, "How do I know?" then he would be exposed. Marquis Xianping had a toothache. Old man, he's not easy to fool. But then again, that ugly girl was actually Xiao Liulong's wife? The first time she saved him, he gave her the smallest silver nude. The second time she saved the emperor, he gave her the second smallest silver nude. Thinking of his stingy behavior in front of his daughter-in-law, Marquis Xuanping's toothache became even more painful. Fuck, I was too careless. Lu Quan went home to deliver a message, saying Gu Jiao's situation. Xiao Lulang was taking care of her in the medical center. He told the family not to worry and not to go see her in the rain. Taking care of her body was the most important. These were Xiao Liulong's original words. Yao She was pregnant, Gu Yan had a heart problem, and little Jing Kong was too small. It was best if they didn't go out. Only Gu Xiaoshun was sturdy enough. But because of this, he should stay and take care of the family. How did she get hurt? Gu Yan asked. It's because the rain was too heavy and the roof slipped. Lu Quan said embarrassedly. There were some things that couldn't be said in front of the children, but he had explained the details to Yao Shi. Only now did Yao Shi know that she hadn't heard wrongly. That young guard called Wu Yang had indeed called Grandaunt the Empress Dowager. Her feelings were very complicated. On one hand, she was very shocked by her grandaunt's past. On the other hand, she felt a deep sense of reluctance towards her grandaunt's departure. She was a woman of the boudoir and was often away from the capital. She hadn't heard many rumors about Empress Dowager Zhuang. She understood that the person was the children's grandaunt. She seemed to be heartless, but she was very protective of everyone. Are they all right? Yao Shi asked. Lu Quan smiled and said, they're fine. They're all external injuries. Gu Jiao's injuries were more serious, but her life wasn't in danger. She just needed to rest for a long time. Little Jing Kong looked around and stuck his head out. After looking around for a long time, he didn't see anything. He walked into the room, spread his hands, and asked, "Where's Grandaunt?" Lu Quan didn't know how to answer. Gu Yan seemed to have sensed something, but he didn't say anything. Yao Shi paused and gently pulled little Jing Kong, whose head was soaked by the rain, into her embrace. She used a handkerchief to wipe his little bald head and said, "Grandaunt went home." Little Jing Kong tilted his head and had a puzzled expression. "No, I didn't see her." Yao Shi held back the bitterness in her heart and stroked his little bald head. "She went back to Grandaunt's home." Little Jing Kong spread his hands. "Isn't this Grandaunt's home?" The heavy rain continued for several days. The nearby rivers were flooded. It didn't clear up until the 6th day of the 5th month. The Ministry of Works was busy controlling the flooding in the streets of the capital and unblocking the underground pipes to restore the citizens' normal mobility. The Imperial College and the major academies also resumed school. In the 5th month, a major event occurred in the capital. The Empress Dowager, who was recuperating in the temporary imperial residence, suddenly announced that she had recovered. She also proudly returned to the palace with the Empress Dowager's ceremonial procession. The citizens all came out to watch. They wanted to see the Empress Dowager's elegance. This was not inferior to the parade of petitioners. After all, petitioners paraded through the streets once every 3 years, but the Empress Dowager only went out a few times in her lifetime. The Empress Dowager went to the temporary imperial residence to recuperate secretly. The citizens did not know. The last time they saw the Empress Dowager's ceremonial procession was when the late emperor passed away. She sent the late emperor off and carried his coffin out of the imperial palace. From then on, the virtuous Empress Dowager became the powerful Empress Dowager Zhuang. Lu Quan had just sent little Jing Kong to the Imperial College. The noise on the streets attracted the attention of the students. Little Jing Kong also ran out and squeezed into the crowd. He looked at the Empress Dowager's ceremonial procession, which was escorted by thousands of imperial guards. In front of the procession, there were officials holding a sign for silence. Behind them were dozens of dignified eunuchs and palace maids. Behind them was a luxurious carriage. Wow! What a big carriage! Little Jing Kong exclaimed. Empress Dowager, long live the Empress Dowager! The citizens along the way knelt down and kowtowed to the person in the carriage. Little Jing Kong did not kowtow, but he was small, so it was not out of place for him to stand. He stared at the gorgeous carriage. Suddenly, the curtain of the carriage was blown open by the wind, revealing the Empress Dowager wearing a heavy phoenix crown and a gorgeous phoenix robe. Although her clothes and aura were different, little Jing Kong recognized her at a glance. Great Aunt! The carriage went past the gate of the Imperial College at a moderate speed. Great Aunt! Great Aunt! Little Jing Kong chased the carriage along the street. However, the citizens' voices were so loud that his small voice was ruthlessly suppressed. Ouch! He fell and rolled to the side of an Imperial Guard's feet. The Imperial Guard helped him up with a dignified look. Whose child is it? Take it back. Hers. Hers. Little Jing Kong pointed at Empress Dowager Zhuang's carriage. The Imperial Guard said sternly, "How dare you? That's the Empress Dowager." Little Jing Kong stomped his feet. It's Great Aunt. It was Great Aunt. He could not be wrong. An uncle next to him laughed. Child, that's the Empress Dowager in the palace, not your Great Aunt. This child must be an idiot. He couldn't even tell his Great Aunt from the Empress Dowager. Little Jing Kong grunted seriously. So Great Aunt lived in the palace? Little Chi, Little Chi. Little Jing Kong ran into the classroom of the Imperial College and woke up Qin Chuyu, who was lying on the table and drooling. Take me to the palace. I want to find Great Aunt. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found on the internet. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826/112750595. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. M. zhbqg.com. Chapter 268. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find online. Your Great Aunt? Is she in the palace? Yes. I saw her just now. They said she lives in the palace. Qin Chuyu was confused. Lives in the palace? Only the masters of the palace, such as the Empress Dowager, the imperial concubines, and the princes, lived in the palace. However, there were many maids and nannies in the palace. Maybe one of them was his great aunt? What's her name? Qin Chuyu asked. My great aunt's name is... Little Jing Kong remembered that he didn't know his great aunt's name. I don't know. Well... Qin Chuyu sighed. If you don't know her name, it'll be hard to find her. There are more people in the palace than in the Imperial College. Little Jing Kong carefully recalled, and a thought flashed in his mind. He said, they call her Empress Dowager. Cough. Qin Chuyu choked. The Empress Dowager? Your great-aunt is the Empress Dowager? Are you a member of the Zhuang family? Little Jing Kong thought for a while and said seriously, I was a farmer in the countryside. Now that we moved to the capital, I don't farm anymore, so I'm not a farmer anymore. Qin Chuyu thought, what does that have to do with farming? Why aren't you a member of the Zhuang family after moving to the capital? Can this be changed at will? The two kids talked for a long time, but Qin Chuyu still didn't know if little Jing Kong was a member of the Zhuang family. He was only 8 years old. He didn't understand, but he also knew that his mother and noble consort Zhuang didn't get along. Qin Chuyu said seriously, "If you're a member of the Zhuang family, I can't play with you anymore." Little Jing Kong widened his eyes and said, "But I'm not a farmer anymore. You can play with me." Well, okay. He didn't want to leave his little friend. "But I can't take you to the palace today. My sister-in-law is sick recently, and my brother is in a bad mood. I'll make him unhappy if I take you to the palace. Wait for 2 days, I'll take you to the palace." Little Jing Kong thought, that's the only way. Empress Dowager Zhuang returned to Ranshou Palace after more than a year. Everything in the Ranshou Palace was the same as before. Even the palace servants were the same as before she left the palace. Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager, she didn't inform the emperor in advance. Empress Dowager Zhuang sat on the phoenix chair above the steps of the main hall. She wore a black robe embroidered with golden phoenixes and a golden phoenix crown on her head. She looked graceful and luxurious, but also domineering. The emperor stood on the white marble floor in front of her, his face full of respect and filial piety. "Mother Empress Dowager's phoenix body is in good health, it is truly a great fortune for the country." Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager, Empress. Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager. The light in the emperor's eyes moved. He smiled at Empress Dowager Zhuang and said, "The road to the temporary residence is long. Imperial Mother must be tired." Aken brought Imperial Physician Liang to check Imperial Mother's pulse. Present. Imperial Physician Liang, who was over 50 years old, walked forward with a medicine box. He knelt down and kowtowed to Empress Dowager Zhuang. This official respectfully welcomes the Empress Dowager. "Long live the Empress Dowager." Empress Dowager Zhuang sneered. She stretched out her hand and casually said, "The emperor is filial. I won't reject the emperor's good intentions." The emperor gave Imperial Physician Liang a meaningful glance, indicating that he should take Empress Dowager Zhuang's pulse. Imperial Physician Liang walked on his knees to the Empress Dowager's feet and placed the medicine chest on the ground. After opening it, he took out a clean silk cloth and placed it on the Empress Dowager's wrist. Then, he took the Empress Dowager's pulse through the silk cloth. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. "Imperial Physician Liang, how is Aijia's pulse?" Imperial Physician Liang withdrew his hand and put the silk cloth away. He cupped his hands and said, "The Empress Dowager's pulse is stable and seems to be more healthy than before." The emperor furrowed his brows. Empress Dowager Zhuang faintly raised the corner of her lips. "The emperor is very disappointed?" The emperor hurriedly said, "How could that be? This son has always hoped that mother will recover soon, live a long life, and live a long life." Empress Dowager Zhuang sneered, "With the emperor's auspicious words, Aijia will live a long life. Aijia also wants to see Zhao country grow stronger day by day, the people have enough food and clothing, and return the world to a peaceful and prosperous era." The emperor's hands, which were hidden under his wide sleeves, clenched into fists. Empress Dowager Zhuang smiled and said, "Aijia knows of the emperor's filial piety. If there is nothing else, the emperor should be busy. Aijia is not here. Presumably the emperor is very busy." These words were somewhat meaningful. What was the emperor busy with? It was unknown whether he was busy dealing with state affairs or busy cutting off the Empress Dowager's henchmen. The emperor said, "This son will leave first. Mother, take care of your phoenix body. This son will come to visit mother another day." "No need," Empress Dowager Zhuang said. The emperor was slightly stunned. The next second, he heard Empress Dowager Zhuang say, "You will be able to see tomorrow morning. Why make another trip?" This meant that the emperor was going to hold court again. The emperor didn't know what kind of mood he had when he walked out of Ranshou Palace. He asked Eunuch Wei to dismiss the servants and asked Imperial Physician Liang, "Is the Empress Dowager's pulse really okay?" Imperial Physician Liang said, "Yes, Your Majesty. The Empress Dowager's pulse is indeed better than before she left the palace. Her body is much stronger." The emperor suspiciously said, "How can she still be strong after wandering among the people for so long? What about her leprosy?" Imperial Physician Liang shook his head, "There is no leprosy. The emperor frowned. There is no leprosy. Does that mean she has recovered, or did she not have it at all? This imperial physician Liang didn't know how to judge. He was the one who diagnosed Empress Dowager Zhuang with leprosy. He was sure that he did not make a mistake. Leprosy was an incurable disease, but the Empress Dowager was no different from a normal person. Could it be that there was a divine doctor who cured the Empress Dowager's leprosy? No, leprosy could only be cured in the Yen Kingdom. Forget it, it was useless to delve into this now. Empress Dowager Zhuang had returned safe and sound. The situation was worse than the emperor had expected. He thought that the emperor had secretly eliminated or subdued many of Empress Dowager Zhuang's henchmen during her absence for more than a year. But she had just returned to the palace this morning, and the situation in the imperial city was reshuffled in the afternoon. The emperor urgently summoned several senior officials, but half of them said that they were sick and couldn't come. Most of the few who came were just playing dumb with him. They had sworn to be loyal to him the day before. The emperor was furious, but he couldn't really kill them. If he did, Empress Dowager Zhuang would definitely come forward to save them, and they would be more loyal to Empress Dowager Zhuang. The emperor was so angry that his heart ached, so he summoned the old chancellor overnight. The old chancellor had left a servant in the rented room. The emperor sent someone to summon him, and his servant would come to Bai Shui Alley to inform him. In fact, the emperor had summoned him several times before. When the emperor was in power, he didn't come. When the emperor was in decline, he came. The emperor was naturally moved. He walked out from behind the desk and held the old chancellor's hand. I knew it. You are the one I can truly trust. The old chancellor's mood was very complicated. He knew that the time he had been waiting for had finally arrived. If he returned to the imperial court now, he would definitely gain the emperor's absolute trust and respect, but he couldn't be happy. Not only for himself, but also for Lu Lang. When Lu Lang entered the imperial court as an official, it meant that he would be the enemy of the entire Zhuang family. It was impossible for him to leave Lu Lang alone. But could he still treat Zhuang Jintz as the former Empress Dowager Zhuang? The emperor said excitedly, I hereby confer you as the Chancellor of the Imperial College. The Imperial Edict will be announced to the world tomorrow. The old Chancellor knelt down and bowed deeply. I thank your Majesty for your grace. Eunuch Wei sent the old Chancellor out of the palace. When they passed by the Imperial Garden, they met Empress Dowager Zhuang's carriage. Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't have a good appetite, and her mood was somewhat irritable. It was the same palace, but somehow, Empress Dowager Zhuang felt lonely. Deep in the palace, it wasn't that she had never been lonely, but this time, there was some desolation. Empress, why don't you eat some more desserts? You ate too little for dinner. A little palace maid held a plate of delicate and delicious rose cakes and said. Empress Dowager Zhuang had no appetite. The old chancellor stood behind the flower bushes and looked at her fixedly. Empress Dowager Zhuang, who was wearing a phoenix robe, had a fierce aura. Her gaze was like a knife, and even when she didn't speak, she was like an unsheathed sword. No one dared to go against her. Eunuch Wei stopped beside the old chancellor, looked at the old chancellor, and then looked at the Empress Dowager. He whispered, Is Lord Hu going to see the Empress Dowager? The old chancellor shook his head. So what if he saw her? She didn't remember. She would no longer hold a knife to his neck to rob him of his secret stash, nor would she force him to go to the kitchen to make brown sugar glutinous rice cakes for her, nor would she hide the half-eaten candied fruits in his room, nor would she bring him along to serve her tea when she went to play cards with Yi Zi. Let's go, the old chancellor said disappointedly. Eunuch Wei looked at the back of the old chancellor. Why did he feel that Lord Hua and the Empress Dowager were a little depressed? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg com/89642_896422826/112729676. HTML Genius remembers the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 269. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that cannot be found on the internet are all available here. The news that Empress Dowager Zhuang could not eat quickly spread to the Zhuang family. Imperial tutor Zhuang was worried that the Empress Dowager's body was not in good condition and quickly asked the imperial physician to check her pulse. However, the Empress Dowager's pulse was not much of a problem. The imperial physician guessed that it was a heart disease. Maybe, the Empress Dowager has been away from the palace for too long and is not used to returning suddenly. Imperial tutor Zhuang said coldly, "She has lived in the palace all her life. She would not be used to it if she went out. She had returned home, what was there to not be used to? Maybe, we can let her family accompany her more," the imperial physician suggested. Imperial tutor Zhuang thought that this was feasible and sent Zhuang Yueshi and Zhuang Mengdai to the palace that night. When Empress Dowager Zhuang saw Zhuang Mengdai, she did not feel much relief. However, when she saw Zhuang Yueshi behind Zhuang Mengdai, her expression suddenly froze. Zhuang Yueshi's clothes were still her gorgeous dress from before, but there was a red peony on the left side of her face. This was the most popular makeup in the capital. Since the court case, the girls in the capital began to put cinnabar on their faces. At first, Zhuang Yueshi did not like this kind of rustic makeup. However, that day, the Empress Dowager touched her left face and said that something was missing. She guessed that it was the current cinnabar makeup that was missing. Thus, she put it on before the Empress Dowager. It seemed that the effect was good. The Empress Dowager really liked it. Empress Dowager Zhuang waved at Zhuang Yueshi. Zhuang Yueshi obediently sat down beside the Empress Dowager. She could feel that the Empress Dowager's attitude towards her was different from before. Since young, she did not like to be spoiled. Although she was excellent in every aspect, it was her idiot sister who was the most favored at home. Even when her eldest brother brought her sister to Jiangnan, he also brought the idiot Zhuang Mengdai. "What did you eat for dinner?" Empress Dowager Zhuang asked while holding her hand. Zhuang Yueshi was flattered and said, "I had some grain porridge for dinner." Empress Dowager Zhuang said, "That is not good. You are still growing and should eat more. Servants, serve the food." The palace servants were overjoyed. It was still Grand Tutor Zhuang who had a way. After sending the two young misses into the palace, the Empress Dowager immediately had an appetite. A dazzling array of dishes was presented on the table. Empress Dowager Zhuang did not let the palace maid serve her. Instead, she personally filled Zhuang Yueshi's bowl with food and said, "You should eat more. You are too thin. You can't even give birth to a grandson for me." Zhuang Yueshi blushed. Empress Dowager. She wasn't even married yet. Zhuang Mengdai asked in surprise, "Empress Dowager, are you going to arrange a marriage for my sister?" Empress Dowager Zhuang frowned and looked at Zhuang Yueshi. "Arranged marriage? Aren't you married?" "Ah." Zhuang Yueshi was stunned. "Empress Dowager, I didn't." Empress Dowager Zhuang was in a trance. Then who was it that got married? Where was her little grandson? "Empress Dowager, are you okay?" Zhuang Yueshi held Empress Dowager's hand with concern. Empress Dowager Zhuang couldn't remember. She shook her head and said, "It's okay. Maybe I remembered wrong. Speaking of which, you're 16 this year, and you'll be 17 in half a year. It's time to arrange a marriage for you." Zhuang Yueshi whispered. "Yueshi doesn't want to get married. Yueshi wants to stay at home and serve my parents. I also want to accompany you." Empress Dowager Zhuang said, You can go back to your family after you get married. No one dares to wrong the daughter of the Zhuang family. Zhuang Yueshi picked up her chopsticks again and didn't say anything. Empress Dowager Zhuang still didn't eat much. The joy that Zhuang Yueshi brought to the Empress Dowager when she entered the palace seemed to fade when Zhuang Yueshi said that she wasn't married. Zhuang Yueshi didn't understand what was going on. Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't understand either. The next day, Empress Dowager Zhuang went to the imperial court and listened to the state affairs behind the curtain. The emperor announced the imperial edict to confer the old chancellor as the imperial college's chancellor. Mother, do you have any objections? The emperor turned sideways and looked at Empress Dowager Zhuang behind the bead curtain. Empress Dowager Zhuang's thin lips curled up slightly. You're my old friend. I haven't seen you for a few years, and I miss you very much. The imperial college will be handed over to Minister Hua. The old chancellor held the ceremonial tablet and knelt on the throne room. It was only a dozen steps, but it seemed to be a distance of thousands of rivers and mountains. Long live the emperor! Long live the Empress Dowager! Empress Dowager Zhuang smiled faintly. I also have an imperial edict to announce. Here it comes. The emperor clenched his fingers. Neither too fast nor too slow, Empress Dowager Zhuang said. The position of the Great Marshal of the world's armed forces has always been vacant. After discussing it with the ministers, Aijia felt that it would be more appropriate to establish one. The great general of agile cavalry is brave and good at fighting, courageous and astute. He has the military armor in his belly. He has the stratagem of the world's armed forces and horses. He is loyal to His Majesty. What do you think, Your Majesty? The world's marshal of Zhao country, wouldn't it be above Marquis Xian Ping? Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't object to him conferring the position of the Imperial College's chancellor, which gave him enough face. If he rejected the Empress Dowager's imperial edict, Empress Dowager Zhuang would have a way to stop the old chancellor from taking office. There was a delicate balance between them, but Empress Dowager Zhuang was too greedy this time. The world's marshal of Zhao country? Why didn't she just abolish him and become the emperor herself? Empress Dowager Zhuang said, If Your Majesty has any objections, we can discuss it another day. The emperor's fingernails dug into his palms. Zhan has no objections. The Empress Dowager's intentions are Zhen's intentions. After court, the emperor returned to the palace with an ashen face. Empress Dowager Zhuang also returned to Ranshou Palace. Everyone thought that Empress Dowager Zhuang had won, but only Empress Dowager Zhuang knew that she was not happy. The moment she entered the Ranshou Palace, the arrogance and willfulness on her face completely disappeared, and she once again fell into endless loneliness. Zhuang Mengdai used to be the closest to the Empress Dowager. In fact, she had noticed something strange about the Empress Dowager. In just 2 days, the Empress Dowager had lost weight. She still remembered that stormy night when the Empress Dowager arrived at the Zhuang family with injuries. At that time, the Empress Dowager's face was rosy, but these days, as long as there was no one around, her eyes would lose their luster. This kind of Empress Dowager made her heart ache. After the emperor angrily returned to Pure Flower's palace, he locked himself up in his bedroom and sulked. Anyone who heard about the court didn't dare to provoke the emperor, but there was one person who didn't hear about the court's bloody storm. Qin Chuyu. These days, Qin Chuyu had been thinking of ways to fulfill his promise to his little classmate, but his older brother the Crown Prince and sister-in-law the Crown Prince Consort didn't have the time to take care of him. He had no choice but to beg his imperial father. Imperial father, little Qi misses you. One of little Jing Kong's great methods of acting cute. Don't say anything, just say a few sweet words first. As expected, the emperor's expression softened. He looked at his chubby youngest son and asked, Why are you here? Don't you need to go to class today? The Imperial College is on holiday today. Qin Chuyu sat down next to his imperial father. He was still young, so the emperor didn't restrict him too much. However, he wasn't like this in the past. It was only when he saw how little Jing Kong interacted with his family that he imitated him. Other than the eldest prince, no other son was this close to the emperor. They were like a normal father and son. Qin Chuyu hugged his imperial father's hand. Imperial father, can I ask you for a favor? Emperor, speak. Qin Chuyu, can I bring my classmate to the palace to play? Usually, the emperor wouldn't refuse such a small thing. However, he had suffered too much in front of the Empress Dowager today, so he said, Your grandmother went back to the palace. You know that she doesn't like noise and doesn't like people making noise in the palace. If you guys offend her, I can't take responsibility for you. Qin Chuyu said softly, Oh, Imperial Father, you can even take responsibility for your country. Why can't you take responsibility for us if we get into trouble? What a flatterer. The emperor was annoyed and amused at the same time. You know that you guys get into trouble every time. Qin Chuyu hugged his imperial father's arm and said coquettishly, Please, Imperial Father, little Qi loves you. The emperor felt goosebumps all over his body. You're already 8 years old. Do you really think you're 4 years old? The emperor would never agree. At this point, he couldn't let the Empress Dowager have any evidence against him. Qin Chuyu didn't understand these schemes. He only knew that he had promised his friend, so he had to do it. He clung to the emperor like a long tail. When the emperor went to the imperial study, he went to the imperial study. When the emperor went to the imperial garden, he also went to the imperial garden. In the end, the emperor went to the outhouse. Qin Chuyu quickly followed behind her. The emperor, once the emperor made up his mind, he couldn't change it. Qin Chuyu tried his best but still couldn't make his father change his mind. Let's go back. We have to wake up early for school tomorrow. Qin Chuyu walked forward listlessly. At this moment, he happened to be next to the imperial liquid pool. He didn't notice and slipped, falling into the pool. The emperor quickly tried to catch him. However, Qin Chuyu only fell on the edge of the pool. The emperor missed him and fell into the pool. Qin Chuyu, he didn't do it on purpose. Eunuch Wei was shocked. Your Majesty, although the emperor was saved quickly, he choked on a lot of water and was shocked. He started to feel unwell at night. First, he had a high fever, night sweats, coughs, and then he felt dizzy and nauseous. Eunuch Wei went to find Imperial Dr. Liang, but he was told that Imperial Dr. Liang was out of the city. Zhang, Imperial Dr. Zhang. The emperor said with difficulty. Eunuch Wei sent someone to the Zhang family, but Imperial Dr. Zhang wasn't home either. All of this was too much of a coincidence. Eunuch Wei said, Your Majesty, why don't we go find Imperial Dr. Li? The emperor said with a pale face, Imperial Dr. Li works for the Empress Dowager. Do you think I will trust him? Eunuch Wei was worried. Then what should we do? How about Imperial Dr. Chan and don't find an Imperial Doctor? The emperor's eyes turned cold. Go to the Miracle Doctor Hall and ask him to come here. Remember, don't be too flamboyant. Go there yourself. Yes. It was already so late. He didn't know if the doctor was at the clinic. Eunuch Wei left the palace and went to the Miracle Doctor Hall. The Miracle Doctor Hall was already closed, but there was a doctor on duty in the Miracle Doctor Hall. If there was an emergency at night, he could ring the bell outside. Eunuch Wei rang the bell. The one who opened the door was Dr. Song. Dr. Song yawned and asked, Where are you feeling unwell? Eunuch Wei hurriedly said, It's not that I'm feeling unwell, it's my master. Is Miss Gu here? Dr. Song had seen Eunuch Wei before and knew that he was a servant of an official. Moreover, the master and servant seemed to know Gu Jiao. Dr. Song said, Miss Gu has rested. I'll go with you. No, it has to be Miss Gu. Eunuch Wei insisted. Dr. Song explained, Miss Gu is injured. It's so late she can't go on a house call. What happened? It was Xiao Liulong's voice. Dr. Song looked at Xiao Lulang and said, His master is sick and wants to ask Miss Gu to go on a house call. When Eunuch Wei saw Xiao Lulang, his expression froze. Xiao Zhuangyuan? Why are you here? Dr. Song was surprised that the other party actually knew Xiao Lulang and also knew Gu Jiao. However, he He didn't know that they were husband and wife. He said, "He is Miss Gu's husband." Eunuch Wei was stunned. Xiao Zhuangyuan is actually Miss Gu's husband? Miss Gu is married? Her partner is the new top scholar, Xiao Lulang? When did this happen? Xiao Lulang looked at Eunuch Wei and said, "I know. I'll go and tell her." Eunuch Wei's consciousness returned. He didn't have time to think about the relationship between the two. He bowed and thanked. Thank you, Xiao Zhuangyuan." The movement outside had already woken up Gu Jiao. When Xiao Lulang entered the room, she had already opened her eyes. "Are you going on a house call?" she asked. Xiao Lulang paused and said, "The emperor is sick." Everyone knew that the emperor should find an imperial physician when he was sick. Since he didn't find one, it meant that he had reached a point where he had to find Gu Jiao. "Okay, I'll go." Gu Jiao nodded. If she went, she would be involved in a quarrel. If the emperor couldn't find an imperial physician that he trusted, then there was only one possibility. The Empress Dowager wanted to kill him while he was sick. Xiao Liulong's thoughts turned, but he didn't stop her. He only asked, "Your injury?" "It's just a superficial wound. I'm fine now." It was really fine, at least in her opinion. Xiao Lulang took her outer shirt and said, "I'll go with you." Gu Jiao thought for a moment and nodded, "Okay." The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826/112728252. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, zhbqg.com. Chapter 270. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with a deeper meaning that can't be found online are all available here. The two of them rode Eunuch Wei's carriage to the imperial palace. Eunuch Wei was the head steward of Pure Flower's palace, so no one dared to stop him from inspecting his carriage. The group smoothly entered the palace. Strictly speaking, Pure Flower's palace didn't belong to the imperial harem. Men outside could enter, but Eunuch Wei had to inform the emperor that they weren't summoned. However, by the time he went to inform the emperor was already close to losing consciousness. His condition was very bad. His face was swollen and he had difficulty breathing. It was as if he wouldn't be able to breathe at any moment. "Your Majesty!" Eunuch Wei couldn't care less. He hurriedly went out to invite Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang in. This was the first time Xiao Lulang had seen Gu Jiao save a patient. The scene at Jadewater Alley when she operated on Gu Changlin was too bloody, so Gu Jiao closed the door and didn't allow Xiao Lulang to enter. Gu Jiao carried her medical kit to the bright yellow dragon bed. Her expression was calm and unhurried. "Light the lamps. Quickly light the lamps," Eunuch Wei hurriedly instructed. All the candles were lit and the oil lamps were adjusted to the brightest. The dim bedchamber was suddenly brightly lit. Gu Jiao was dressed in green. Her slender figure stood in the vast and spacious hall. She was as small as a chestnut, but she emitted a dazzling radiance and aura. Xiao Lulang stared at her. This was a serious expression that he had never seen before. It was a little unfamiliar, but also a little hard to shift his gaze away. "Zhuangyuan Xiao, my apologies." Eunuch Wei smiled embarrassedly at Xiao Lulang. It was time to undress His Majesty. He couldn't let people watch anymore. He had the palace servants place a screen in front of the bright yellow dragon bed. Xiao Lulang could only vaguely see the figure projected on the screen. "Is His Majesty all right?" Eunuch Wei asked worriedly. "He was fine just now. Why did it suddenly become so serious? Isn't it just a few mouthfuls of water?" This was dry drowning, which was a type of drowning. Usually, people would choke on a few mouthfuls of water and be no different from ordinary people when they came ashore. However, when they returned home, they would have difficulty breathing, cyanosis of the mouth and lips, drowsiness, fatigue, coma, suffocation, and even drowning. This kind of situation mostly occurred in young children and people with weak bodies. It also happened occasionally in people with strong bodies. The main reason was that there wasn't much water in the lungs, so it didn't affect the air exchange between the alveoli. However, there would be convulsions in the throat, closure of the glottis, and hypoxia in the brain. Gu Jiao stepped onto the dragon bed, took off His Majesty's sleeping clothes, and knelt beside His Majesty. She cleaned up the residue in His Majesty's mouth and nose, and then performed chest compressions for His Majesty. After doing this, she opened the small medicine box and found a portable bottle of pure oxygen inside. There are more things other than medicine. Gu Jiao put the oxygen mask on the Emperor. The Emperor slowly opened his eyes after a short while. His blurry vision slowly became clearer. The moment he saw that it was Gu Jiao, the Emperor's heart calmed down. He opened his mouth. "Miss Gu." Gu Jiao held his oxygen mask. "Don't talk first. Take some oxygen." His hypoxia was very serious. She didn't know if it had caused cerebral edema. Without the precision detection of instruments, she could only judge by observation. She had to observe him for a night and judge if he had passed the danger tomorrow morning. Hearing this, the Emperor could only nod slightly. Eunuch Wei walked forward and saw that the Emperor opened his eyes. He couldn't help but wipe away his bitter tears. "Your Majesty, you scared me to death." Fortunately, His Majesty made a prompt decision to invite Miss Gu over. Otherwise, the imperial doctors would be helpless in such a serious situation. Soon, the Emperor fell asleep. Eunuch Wei intended to ask Gu Jiao to rest in the side hall, and he could stay by himself. However, he suddenly didn't know how to address her. When he first met her, he thought that she was not married. It became a habit to call her Miss Gu, mainly because the second boss and the people in the medical center also called her that. The second boss called her that because he felt that the two of them were not real husband and wife. The people in the medical center called her that because their boss called her that. In short, everyone now called her Miss Gu. Even if they knew that she had a husband, it seemed that this name had become a part of her identity. Everyone did not change it and did not feel that it was out of place. This was a very strange thing. The screen was taken down. Gu Jiao returned to Xiao Liulong's side and sat down. Xiao Lulang looked at the thin layer of sweat on her forehead and took out a handkerchief to pass to her. He intended to give it to Gu Jiao to wipe herself. However, he didn't know if he handed it too high, but Gu Jiao misunderstood that he wanted to wipe it for her. Gu Jiao leaned forward across the small tea table in the middle. Xiao Lulang was stunned and pinched the handkerchief. In the end, he didn't withdraw his hand and gently wiped her forehead. Eunuch Wei prepared a side room for the two of them and invited them to rest in the side room. "I don't need it. You go and rest," Gu Jiao said to Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lulang paused. "I don't need it either." Gu Jiao stayed by the patient's side for the whole night. Xiao Lulang stayed by her side for the whole night. Deep in the palace, the silhouette of the cold window, the clouds and the moon on the branches, the night was quiet. Early in the morning, Empress Dowager Zhuang went to the court to continue her great task of listening to politics behind the curtain. Among the officials of the cultural relics, except for Marquis Xianping who liked to sleep in, were basically all present, including the newly appointed Chancellor of the Imperial College and the Marshal of the World. Empress Dowager Zhuang sat behind the curtain of black beads, luxurious and graceful. The time for the morning court gradually passed, but the Emperor still didn't appear. The officials gradually began to whisper. "Why hasn't the Emperor come yet? Did he forget the time?" Or is the emperor out of harmony? It couldn't be that he lingered in the harem, so the emperor didn't attend the morning court. After all, everyone knew that the emperor had recently been addicted to elixirs and wanted to clear his heart and restrain his desires for 2 years. Or was he angered by Empress Dowager Zhuang? It wasn't strange to think about it. On the first day Empress Dowager Zhuang returned to the court, she conferred the title of Marshal of the World and forcibly took away the military power that should have belonged to Marquis Xianping. It would be strange if the emperor didn't fall ill from anger. But the more the emperor acted like this, the more the courtiers felt the power of Empress Dowager Zhuang and unconsciously surrendered to her. Just as the courtiers' emotions were complicated, Eunuch Wei's voice sounded outside the throne room. The emperor has arrived. The civil and military officials knelt on both sides of the room with their ceremonial tablets. The emperor strode through the center of the hall with his head held high and came to the top of the stairs. He stood in front of the dragon throne and bowed to Empress Dowager Zhuang behind the curtain. "Mother, I came late. I hope Mother doesn't blame me." Empress Dowager Zhuang calmly looked at him, a trace of astonishment flashing through her eyes. "It's good that the emperor is here." The emperor smiled. "Mother seems to be very disappointed?" Empress Dowager Zhuang raised her chin and calmly said, "The emperor is worrying too much. Aijia would be disappointed if the emperor didn't come. Since the emperor's body is fine, let's begin the morning court." The emperor coldly laughed and turned around to sit on the dragon throne. The pressure of the Son of Heaven shook the surroundings. Morning court. On the other side, Xiao Lulang and Gu Jiao had a simple breakfast in Pure Flower's palace and then left the palace. Xiao Lulang took her small medicine box and held it in his hand. The small box clearly wasn't heavy, so he really didn't know how she could take out so much medicine. The two of them passed by the throne room. The carriage was parked near the throne room and Eunuch Wei personally sent them back. There wasn't anything important in the morning court, so it was quickly dismissed. Empress Dowager Zhuang came out of the throne room and sat on her phoenix carriage. Her phoenix carriage was carried by 8 palace experts and was surrounded by muslin curtains. Outsiders could vaguely see a graceful figure, but it wasn't very clear. Gu Jiao and Xiao Liulong's carriage headed east while Empress Dowager Zhuang's carriage headed west. They were both on the same central axis. The moment the carriage turned around and headed towards the inner palace, Empress Dowager Zhuang suddenly raised her hand as if she had sensed something. The female official kneeling beside her hurriedly said, "Stop the carriage." The carriage stopped. The female official asked, "Empress Dowager, what's wrong?" Empress Dowager Zhuang slightly paused and looked behind the carriage. However, before she could take a look, Zhuang Yueshi's voice came from the front. "Great aunt." Empress Dowager Zhuang was slightly startled by this great aunt. She stopped looking back and had someone lift the curtain. She looked at Zhuang Yueshi. Today, Zhuang Yueshi was wearing a simple green dress with narrow sleeves. This was also a popular style in the capital. She was puzzled as the capital had always been beautiful with wide sleeves and gorgeous dresses. The richer the family's daughter, the bigger the sleeves. Only the daughters of poor families would wear narrow sleeves to make it easier to work. Last time, Empress Dowager Zhuang liked the trendy cinnabar makeup and wondered if Empress Dowager Zhuang would also like trendy dresses. In the end, she made the right bet. Empress Dowager Zhuang liked it very much. Empress Dowager Zhuang's eyes were gentle as she said to her, "Come up." Zhuang Yueshi was overjoyed. Could she sit on Empress Dowager Zhuang's phoenix carriage? Empress Dowager Zhuang's phoenix carriage was something that even the princess had never sat on before. Zhuang Yueshi was flattered and sat on it. The floor of the phoenix carriage was covered with a soft velvet carpet, which was said to be made of the best snow fox fur. It was as if one was stepping on clouds and had a sense of supreme glory. This was much more magnificent than a carriage and sedan. Zhuang Yueshi sat beside Empress Dowager Zhuang. From this height, she felt that the palace's scenery was different. Zhuang Mengdai was still sleeping and missed the opportunity to sit on the phoenix carriage. After arriving at Ranshou Palace, Empress Dowager Zhuang asked people to open the storeroom and take out all the good things. She calmly chose a few for Zhuang Yueshi. There was the Donghai Luminous Pearl, Shisha Purple Smoke Pot, Dongjin Dynasty's Black Iron Dagger, the previous dynasty's Taitsong Ancient Sword, the Old King of War's Armor. The first two were still acceptable, but why did the latter feel a bit wrong? What dagger, ancient sword, armor, were they for a girl? A talented girl like her actually liked famous calligraphy and paintings more. However, since they were given to her by Empress Dowager, she was still very happy. Empress Dowager Zhuang kept giving her gifts, even jade beads, gold pichio, and wood tools. Zhuang Yueshi was confused. These were all things for a child to play with. Is it too much? She calmed down and asked. Empress Dowager Zhuang said, for Jiao Jiao, it's not much. After saying this, Empress Dowager Zhuang was stunned. What did I just say? Zhuang Yueshi was stunned and said, nothing, you said it's for me, it's not much. The Empress Dowager was really too much. How could she even call her name wrong? She had a pet name, Yu Yu. Gu Jiao returned to the courtyard of the medical center and Xiao Lulang immediately changed her bandages. She lay on the soft bed and Xiao Lulang gently lifted her clothes. This time, he did not have any other thoughts because she was seriously injured. When she tried to save the emperor, she tore her wound. A few scabs had split open and blood had seeped into the gauze. After it dried, it stuck to the gauze. Xiao Lulang took a deep breath and calmed down. He said to her, it might hurt a little, bear with it. The person on the bed did not move. Xiao Lulang bent down to take a look and saw that she was already asleep. Her eyes were slightly closed, and her long eyelashes cast a thin shadow on her cheeks. The tip of her nose was slightly sweaty, and she was probably enduring the pain in her sleep. It was not that it did not hurt, it was that she did not care about it. Was it because she had been in more pain before? Xiao Lulang frowned and changed her bandages even more gently. By Shui Alley. The family sat together to eat. At the table, there was no Gu Jiao, no Xiao Lulang, and no great-aunt who always asked them what they did today. The food was not fragrant anymore. On the 10th of May, the results of the imperial examination came out. Du Ruhan was on the list and ranked 7th. Feng Lin and Lin Chengye were ranked 80 and 79 respectively. There were a total of 72 grand scholars who participated in the imperial examination. The rest were all top 3 grand scholars. Feng Lin and Lin Chengye were top 3 grand scholars. It was not easy for them to beat many of their peers in the imperial examination. Therefore, even though they were at the bottom, Feng Lin was still so excited that he cried. He had seen too many people who fell behind in the examination. Everyone had set off from their hometown, but every time there was an examination, a few would fall behind. There was even no one who could walk to the end, or they could only walk to the end alone. It was rare for them to all stay in the capital. This was really a blessing from the heavens. From today onwards, they were all scholars of the imperial court. Scholars of the imperial court were not official officials in the formal sense. If one insisted on giving them a title, they would be preparatory officials of the imperial court. They would study in the imperial court of the Hanlin Academy for 3 years. After 3 years, the court would close and those with excellent results would become true scholars of the Hanlin Academy. At that time, the examination would not be as high as 80 out of 200. In previous years, the court would only accept 3 people. The rest would be sent to become local officials or teachers based on their results and daily performance. Even though the examination was cruel, there were still 3 years to go. Xiao Lulang was not too surprised by this result. Feng Lin and Lin Chengye were both hard-working people and had received a lot of guidance from the old chancellor. The top scholar of the imperial court had personally taught them. It would be unreasonable if they still did not pass the examination. On the 11th of May, Xiao Lulang reported to the Hanlin Academy. Along with him were the second-place Commandery Prince and the third-place Ning Ziyuan. According to the laws and traditions of the Zhao country, the top scholar of the previous examinations would be given the position of a 6th-rank scholar in the Hanlin Academy. The main responsibility of a 6th-rank scholar in the Hanlin Academy was to record the emperor's words and deeds, lecture on history, and draft manuscripts related to ceremonies. The second place and the third place were given the position of a 7th-rank scholar in the Hanlin Academy. The editors of the Hanlin Academy were mainly responsible for drafting edicts, editing history books, and lecturing on the Confucian classics. They were new editors and editors. These important tasks were temporarily not for them to do. Their main responsibility was still to study. In addition to continuing to study the original classics, they also needed to familiarize themselves with the laws, court affairs, regulations, agriculture, mathematics, history, astronomy, and so on. It could be said that the things they needed to learn were more and more complicated than when they took the imperial examinations. Those who were not Jinshe could enter the Hanlin Academy, and those who were not Hanlin could not enter the cabinet. But was it that easy to enter the cabinet? Those who thought that they could sit back and relax after passing the 3 tripod tests were too naive. They had an exam every 3 months. At the end of the year, there was also the annual examination. If they failed the annual examination, they would be given a warning. If they failed the annual examination twice, they would be demoted. Commandery Prince An's injuries had healed. He had regained his handsome appearance. Although he was a 7th-rank scholar, the office he was given was bigger and more spacious than Xiao Liulong's. This was not strange. After all, the cabinet was Grand Tutor Zhuang's territory. Most of the Hanlin Academy was also controlled by Grand Tutor Zhuang. However, the office Ning Ziyuan was given was also better than Xiao Liulong's. This was somewhat thought-provoking. No way you. Ning Ziyuan was helping Xiao Lulang move things. As soon as he arrived at the door, he smelled an indescribable smell. He whispered, "Why is your office near the stable?" It was fine in the winter, but when the weather was hot, that smell, it was too overwhelming. Ning Ziyuan continued to whisper, "You said you were going to make things difficult for me. I think you're being made things difficult for by someone else. I heard about what happened to the Zhuang family. That Empress Dowager Zhuang is back. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to be so brazen. Just bear with it for a while. When this is over, maybe His Majesty will find an opportunity to give you a place." Xiao Lulang had expected that after returning to the capital, what awaited him would not be a bright future. He said carelessly, "Don't come to my office all the time." "Do you think I want to come here?" Ning Ziyuan whispered, "They told me to come here and laugh at you. Don't take it to heart." Ning Ziyuan was well versed in the ways of an official. On the first day, he was pulled into a camp. Before he could protect himself, he could only pretend to defect to the enemy. In fact, he was on His Majesty's side. He was also willing to become friends with Xiao Lulang. "I've put down the things. I'm leaving." Ning Ziyuan gently put a stack of books on Xiao Liulong's desk. He walked to the door, hesitated for a moment, then turned back and picked up a few books. "Sorry, brother." After saying this, he threw the books on the ground with a loud bang. Then he picked them up, patted them, and quickly wiped them clean with his sleeves. Then he ran out as if he was escaping. Xiao Lulang shook his head in self-mockery. Being isolated was only the first step. There was also Ning Ziyuan, who helped him in his hour of need. It was not as bad as he had imagined. Recently, several major events had happened in the capital. The most eye-catching one was naturally the high-profile return of Empress Dowager Zhuang, who had been recuperating for more than a year. As soon as she returned to the palace, everything in the capital changed. The second thing was also related to Empress Dowager Zhuang. Empress Dowager Zhuang was going to build a mansion in the capital, which was surrounded by mountains and rivers. Since Empress Dowager Zhuang returned to the palace, the people in the capital had been talking about her, whether they hated or despised her. Is the Empress Dowager building a summer palace for herself again? Isn't it enough that she has 3 summer palaces? Is she still tormenting? It's not for herself. I heard that it's for her niece. It's her niece, not her grandson. Everyone knew that Empress Dowager Zhuang had no children of her own. The one she loved the most was her eldest brother's grandson, Zhuang Yuheng. Wasn't she building a prince's mansion for him? He was almost at the age of marriage, wasn't he? It was time to build a mansion for him. It's not for Prince Anne, it's for Prince Anne's younger sister. Which younger sister? Of course it's not for that idiot younger sister. It's for the eldest daughter of the Zhuang family, who ranked first in the girls' school. My brother-in-law is a craftsman there. I heard from him that the Empress Dowager ordered it to be built according to the specifications of the princess's mansion. When the people in the tea-house heard this, they couldn't help but gasp. Building according to the specifications of the princess's mansion? Were they trying to raise the Zhuang family's daughter to the heavens? But then again, this Miss Zhuang is both talented and has a peerless appearance. She is indeed worthy of the Empress Dowager's love. When the Empress Dowager came back from recuperating in the temporary imperial residence, she brought her to the palace to stay for a while. She's really comparable to our princesses. If the princesses of the imperial family were not loved, they were just empty titles. Miss Zhuang, who had the Empress Dowager's support, was the real uncrowned princess of the Zhao kingdom. For a moment, the people were envious of Zhuang Yueshi. Zhuang Yueshi was already in the limelight. With this, even a 3-year-old child would know. Zhuang Yueshi was also very happy. She didn't expect the Empress Dowager to love her so much. Today, she changed into a red dress to enter the palace. She wanted to brighten the Empress Dowager's eyes. Who knew that the Empress Dowager's expression would fade? It's not pretty. The Empress Dowager shook her head. Zhuang Yueshi was slightly stunned. This was her prettiest outfit. Her mother and servants all said that it was better than the green dress. But in order to please the Empress Dowager, Zhuang Yueshi changed back to the green dress. Only then did the Empress Dowager's eyes soften. She didn't know if it was an illusion. The Empress Dowager seemed to be looking at her, but also seemed to be looking at someone else through her. That afternoon, it was the day to visit the Emperor in the palace. Last time, the Emperor was drowning. Although he forced himself to go to court, he collapsed as soon as he returned to Pure Flower's palace. Fortunately, Gu Jiao left some medicine for him. After he finished the medicine today, Eunuch Wei came. Little Jing Kong came to the medical hall to find her after school. Seeing her packing her medicine box, he asked, Jiao Jiao, Jiao Jiao, where are you going? A house call. Gu Jiao said. Where are you going? The Imperial Palace. Gu Jiao said. For Gu Jiao, whether it was the Imperial Palace or a private residence, it was just a place to work. There was nothing to make a fuss about or hide. The Imperial Palace. Little Jing Kong blinked his big eyes. He stepped forward and hugged Gu Jiao's hand. With a cute face, he said, Jiao Jiao, can you take me with you? I haven't been with you for a few days. I miss you so much. If the Emperor was here, he would be able to tell from whom his chubby son learned to be so mushy. Gu Jiao had no resistance to little Jing Kong's cuteness. In addition, little Jing Kong was an obedient child who never caused trouble for Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao thought that it wasn't impossible to take him with her, but there really was no one at home today. Xiao Lulang and the old chancellor went to the Imperial Academy and the Imperial College. Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshun went to learn martial arts. Madame Yao and senior servant Fang went to the temple to make a wish. Gu Jiao nodded in agreement. Okay, but you can't run around. Little Jing Kong patted his small chest. I promise I won't run around. Gu Jiao brought little Jing Kong onto the carriage. When he saw the little Jing Kong, Eunuch Wei's eyelids twitched. Why did this little ancestor also come? Hello, Eunuch Wei. Little Jing Kong greeted him politely. Eunuch Wei smiled embarrassedly. Okay. Nothing should happen, right? In the past, the three of them always fooled around together. Today, His Highness the 7th Prince wasn't in the palace, and Minister Su's son wasn't there either. As a little child, he shouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Moreover, no matter how he looked at it, this little child was the most obedient of the three. The pasting of walls and gang fighting were definitely done by His Highness the 7th Prince and young Master Su. Little Jing Kong was very obedient along the way. He sat next to Gu Jiao and was as cute as a porcelain doll. This made Eunuch Wei completely relieved. After entering Pure Flower's palace, Eunuch Wei led Gu Jiao to the emperor's follow-up examination and left the little fellow to play in the small garden. He brought some snacks and fruits for him and also arranged for a gentle-looking palace maid to watch over him. Once Eunuch Wei and Gu Jiao left, the little fellow immediately cheated. "Big sister palace maid, let's play hide and seek," he said cutely. Then he disappeared. Nyo Hulu little Jing Kong smiled mischievously and slipped out of Pure Flower's palace. He wanted to find his great-aunt. The imperial palace was so big that he actually didn't know where his great-aunt lived. However, he had asked little Qi before and found out that the Empress Dowager lived in the inner palace. He just had to pass through the imperial garden. He promised Jiao Jiao that he wouldn't run around, so he really didn't run. He just hopped and hopped. He hopped into the imperial garden and saw a familiar figure. Jiao Jiao? You're also here? He hopped over and hugged the other person's leg. The other person was shocked and pushed him away. Little Jing Kong fell on the grass. It didn't hurt, but he was confused. He raised his head and looked at the other person strangely. "You're not Jiao Jiao. Why are you wearing Jiao Jiao's clothes?" I've seen you before. You're the big sister who gave me candied haws." When Zhuang Yueshi heard this, she also recognized little Jing Kong. Wasn't this the little fellow she met when she went to Jade Water Alley to find Gu Jiao? Her neck was pecked by the little fellow's gerfalcon and it hurt for a few days. Wait. What did he call her just now? Jiao Jiao? Gu Jiao's appearance suddenly flashed across Zhuang Yueshi's mind. She was dressed in green and had a red birthmark on the left side of her face. Zhuang Yueshi's expression changed. Miss Zhuang, Miss Zhuang." A palace maid came over with a basket. "You need a basket and scissors." This palace maid was sent by the Empress Dowager to serve her. She went to get the tools for picking flowers for her. Otherwise, she wouldn't be alone. Zhuang Yueshi faintly had an absurd guess in her mind. She thought it was impossible. However, she shuddered when she thought of all the strange things that happened after the Empress Dowager returned to the palace and the coarse clothes that the Empress Dowager wore that night. She didn't take the basket from the palace maid. Instead, she took a few steps back and looked at the little fellow in front of her in horror. Her lips trembled, and she turned around and walked away. Little Jing Kong scratched his head. What's going on? Zhuang Yueshi stumbled back to Rancho Palace in a daze. The palace maid chased after her with the basket. Miss Zhuang, are you okay? Are you not feeling well? Or are you frightened by something? Although the imperial garden was taken care of by craftsmen, it was not impossible for insects and rats to appear in May. It can't be. It can't be. Zhuang Yueshi murmured in a daze. The Empress Dowager doted on her, not a lowly palace maid. She was the Empress Dowager's niece. What was that palace maid? She wasn't even fit to carry her shoes. Pure Flower's palace. Gu Jiao finished examining the emperor. She took off the stethoscope and said, "Your Majesty is healthy. There's nothing wrong." That. The emperor's eyes flashed. He wanted to say something but stopped. Gu Jiao said, "Your venereal disease has also been cured. You have to insist on a follow-up examination within 2 years. You can have intercourse." Great, his disguise was really gone. He had nothing to live for. The emperor cleared his throat. Cough, "It's not like I have to." Great, he could pamper the harem. He was quite happy. Who wasn't a normal man? Gu Jiao packed up and prepared to leave. When she went outside, she found the palace maid looking around. Little Jing Kong was gone. "What are you looking for?" Gu Jiao asked. The palace maid said, "This servant is playing hide and seek with Mrs. Younger Brother." "You've been played, little girl." Gu Jiao glanced around and knew that little Jing Kong wouldn't hide here. He would only hide in a stove or a rice jar. The little guy had slipped away. Gu Jiao didn't mention her great-aunt's identity to little Jing Kong. Therefore, he didn't know that he was looking for her. However, the little guy skipped around and left a lot of tracks in the grass. Little Jing Kong was determined not to run away. He hopped around outside Pure Flower's palace like a little rabbit. He knew that the Empress Dowager lived here because he asked the palace maids on the way. But what made him angry was that the 2 guards outside didn't let him in. Little Jing Kong said angrily, "You can't stop me. I want to see my great-aunt." One of the eunuchs said, "Which palace are you from?" "This is the Empress Dowager's palace. Go back to where you came from." There were many concubines in the palace. Relatives would visit from time to time. Among them, there was no lack of children the size of little Jing Kong. However, this was the Empress Dowager's palace. Not to mention a relative of a concubine, even His Highness the 7th Prince couldn't trespass. Little Jing Kong couldn't enter in the end. However, if he couldn't enter through the main entrance, what about the dog hole? He heard from Little Chi that there were many dog holes in the palace. What a coincidence. His great-aunt also had one here. He knelt on the ground and crawled over. However, the eunuch who stopped him just now stood behind the dog hole with a small whip in his hand. Little Jing Kong crawled back silently. It was a sunny day today. Little Jing Kong wouldn't give up. "Fine, I can't go in. I'll wait for my great-aunt to come out." Perhaps he was lucky. Empress Dowager Zhuang came out after her afternoon nap. She sat on the Phoenix sedan and planned to go to the Imperial Garden to relax. Zhuang Yueshi accompanied her in the comfortable and luxurious sedan. Little Jing Kong climbed up the tree and stood on the high trunk. He looked at the Phoenix sedan passing by below. He squinted his eyes, stretched out his small arms, and slammed himself down. "Great-aunt, I'm coming. Catch me." Empress Dowager Zhuang was sitting on the Phoenix sedan with her eyes closed. Suddenly, she heard a loud bang. Her body shook and she opened her eyes. She frowned and said, "What hit the ground?" Yes, little Jing Kong misjudged and missed the Phoenix sedan. He fell into the grass and couldn't dig himself out for a long time. It's a child. Maybe he's a relative of one of the concubines. A eunuch outside the Phoenix sedan said, "Send someone to send him back." Empress Dowager Zhuang was not interested in other people's children. "Yes," the eunuch replied. Gu Jiao followed little Jing Kong's footprints and found a place nearby. Then, she heard the noise and hurried over. However, she bumped into Empress Dowager Zhuang's Phoenix sedan. Digression. Are there any more monthly tickets? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online can be found here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826/112701610. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Gu mobile reading website, m. zhbqg.com. Chapter 271. Please scan the QR code below to download the app for more exciting content. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all available here. Who are you? How dare you stop the Empress Dowager? Get out of the way. The steward who served the Empress Dowager was surnamed Qin. He looked at Gu Jiao and said sternly. Gu Jiao didn't look like a noble in the palace, but she didn't look like a palace maid either. Her clothes were not luxurious, and her temperament was very cold. Gu Jiao didn't get out of the way. She looked at the golden phoenix carriage about 10 steps away. The huge golden phoenix embroidery was shining and dazzling in the light. Behind the long gauze curtain, several figures could be vaguely seen. The figure in the middle was wearing a black robe embroidered with golden phoenixes. He sat upright and still, looking both familiar and strange. Great Aunt! Little Jing Kong finally dug himself out of the ground. He endured the little pain and jumped toward the Empress Dowager's carriage. He jumped from the back of the carriage to the front and saw Gu Jiao standing in the middle of the path. He said, "Jiao Jiao. Jiao Jiao." Empress Dowager Zhuang's heart was slightly shocked. Little Jing Kong was covered with mud and grass. He jumped over and dropped the grass as he jumped. He said solemnly, "Jiao Jiao, I didn't run away." Gu Jiao came back to her senses. "Yes, you didn't run away. You just jumped and jumped." Gu Jiao raised her hand to remove the grass on the little guy's head and body. Then she took out a handkerchief to wipe the mud on his face. Eunuch Qin wanted to pull the two people away, but when he looked back, he saw that Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't look unhappy at all through the gap of the gauze curtain. Not only that, but the Empress Dowager Zhuang was also in a daze. Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't like children, which was known by all 6 palaces. Even the 2 daughters of Prince Ning rarely went to Empress Dowager Zhuang. But now, Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't feel bored at all when she looked at the little girl and the dirty little bald head. She couldn't even take her eyes off him. An indescribable emotion suddenly rose from the bottom of her heart. She didn't know what was going on either. Zhuang Yueshi sat beside the Empress Dowager and looked at the Empress Dowager's face. She could not help but feel nervous. When Gu Jiao was almost done, little Jing Kong tilted his head and looked at the Phoenix sedan. He thought for a while and called out, "Great Aunt?" Eunuch Qin's expression changed. He strode forward and said, "How dare you? Who's your great aunt?" Little Jing Kong pointed at her and said seriously, "She is." Eunuch Qin's temples throbbed. "That's the Empress Dowager." "Yes, great aunt." Little Jing Kong looked at the Phoenix sedan and asked in confusion, "Great aunt, why did you come here to be the Empress Dowager? Aren't you coming back with us?" Empress Dowager Zhuang was suddenly stumped by the question. She did not know this child, so why was it so difficult for her to answer the child's question? Also, that strange feeling was getting stronger. She was the Empress Dowager, but when she looked at the 2 children, her heart was suddenly in a mess. She lifted the curtain and wanted to take a closer look at them. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Something big has happened." Eunuch Wei rushed into Pure Flower's palace in a hurry. The Emperor glanced at him. "Why are you in such a hurry?" Eunuch Wei exclaimed. "Miss Gu and her younger brother have been stopped by the Empress Dowager." "What?" The Emperor stood up and strode out. "Imperial Mother." Just as Empress Dowager Zhuang lifted the curtain, the Emperor rushed over, panting. He stood in front of Gu Jiao and little Jing Kong and said breathlessly to Empress Dowager Zhuang, "These 2 are guests that we have invited into the palace. If they have offended Imperial Mother in any way, I hope Imperial Mother will be magnanimous enough to forgive them." Hearing that they were the Emperor's people, Empress Dowager Zhuang lost interest. Her gaze turned cold and she lowered the curtain. She said indifferently, "Since they are the Emperor's people, then the Emperor will take them away." She had no intention of punishing them, but who would believe her? In everyone's eyes, she was that vicious, merciless, unscrupulous demon empress who had no regard for human life. Empress Dowager Zhuang did not explain. "See you off, Imperial Mother," the Emperor said. "Prepare the carriage," Empress Dowager Zhuang said indifferently. The Phoenix carriage slowly passed by Gu Jiao and little Jing Kong. At the moment when the carriage passed by, Empress Dowager Zhuang could not help but lift the curtain and see the thin and tender face under the sun. Her eyebrows were delicate, her skin was like porcelain, and there was a red birthmark on the left side of her face. The girl was expressionless and looked cold. However, Empress Dowager Zhuang did not know if it was her illusion, but she felt that the girl was wronged. What was she wronged about? She had not punished her yet. Empress Dowager Zhuang lowered the curtain. For the whole afternoon, her mind was filled with the girl's face and the heart-wrenching grievance. The relationship between the Emperor and the Empress Dowager was tense. He had been worried that Gu Jiao would be implicated, so he was very cautious. Unexpectedly, Empress Dowager Zhuang still met her. To be cautious, he asked Eunuch Wei to personally send her out of the palace. After leaving the palace, Gu Jiao and little Jing Kong got on the carriage to go back. Little Jing Kong was a little depressed. "Jiao Jiao, Grand Aunt doesn't want us anymore?" Gu Jiao touched his little bald head. She did not know either. However, Grand Aunt seemed to really ignore them. Little Jing Kong climbed onto Gu Jiao's lap and jumped into Gu Jiao's arms to seek comfort. Gu Jiao held him and stroked his little back. Little Jing Kong fell asleep sadly. The coachman was Xiao Sanzi. He waved the whip and the carriage started to move. However, after a few steps, they were stopped by a familiar voice. "Wait." It was Zhuang Yueshi. She caught up with Gu Jiao's carriage and stopped it, forcing Xiao Sanzi to tighten the reins and stop the carriage. Xiao Sanzi felt that this girl looked familiar, but he could not remember where he had seen her. Zhuang Yueshi ignored him. She walked to the window and said to Gu Jiao, "Miss Gu, Grand Aunt asked me to tell you something." She had never called her Grand Aunt in this way, even in front of the Empress Dowager. However, she called her Grand Aunt intimately in front of Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao lifted the curtain indifferently. Zhuang Yueshi's eyelashes trembled. She looked at Gu Jiao coldly and said, "Grand Aunt hopes that today's incident will not happen again. Don't come to the palace to look for her in the future. She is the Empress Dowager. What happened before was just an expedient measure. Don't have any thoughts that you shouldn't have." Gu Jiao looked straight at Zhuang Yueshi. Zhuang Yueshi felt her scalp tingle from that direct and sharp gaze. However, she did not show it on her face. She calmed herself down and took out a pouch from her wide sleeve. She threw it to Gu Jiao and said, "I'm returning this to you." This pouch was personally embroidered by Gu Jiao for her grandaunt. Her embroidery was not very beautiful, but it was very durable. Grandaunt always carried it with her to store small amounts of money. When Grandaunt left, she did not take anything from Bisui Alley. She only took a simple set of clothes and this pouch that had never left her side. This was the only thing that Gu Jiao left at Grandaunt's place. Now, my great-aunt had returned it. Gu Jiao smoothed the creases on the pouch. She did not say anything and quietly put down the curtain. Looking at Gu Jiao's abandoned expression, Zhuang Yueshi felt an indescribable pleasure. The person who blocked her in the alley and threatened her that she would not be able to pay the price finally had a day like this. Her brother was hers and so was her grand-aunt. Zhuang Yueshi returned to Ranshou Palace. Empress Dowager Zhuang was tidying up her set of coarse clothes. She was already the Empress Dowager. These clothes were not presentable and should have been thrown away long ago. However, she did not throw them away. Instead, she brought them back to the palace and kept them in a box. Today, she took out the clothes and laid them on the large and luxurious bed. She flipped and turned in her pockets as if she was looking for something. The little palace maid asked, "Empress Dowager, what are you looking for?" "I am looking for..." Empress Dowager Zhuang was stunned. Yes, what was she looking for? Did she feel that something important was missing? But what was it? Zhuang Yueshi's eyes flashed as she walked into the room. "Empress Dowager." Empress Dowager Zhuang asked, "When you sent the clothes here, did you see anything else?" Empress Dowager Zhuang stayed at the Zhuang family for a night. The clothes were washed by the servants of the Zhuang family and were sent by Zhuang Yueshi herself. Zhuang Yueshi lowered her eyes. "No, only this set of clothes." That night, Empress Dowager Zhuang did not sleep well. As soon as she closed her eyes, she saw the little girl's wronged eyes. She tossed and turned for most of the night and finally fell asleep. However, she dreamed of the little monk again. The little monk tearfully questioned her, "Grand-aunt, why did you come here to be the Empress Dowager? Aren't you going back with us? Aren't you going back with us? You are our grand-aunt." The next morning, through the thick bead curtain, the courtiers felt the Empress Dowager Zhuang's aura of, "Don't provoke me or I will kill your whole family." The courtiers were all silent and did not dare to breathe loudly. After the court, Empress Dowager Zhuang called Grand Tutor Zhuang aside. In the corridor outside the side hall, Grand Tutor Zhuang bowed to Empress Dowager Zhuang. Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager Zhuang, I have something to ask you. Grand Tutor Zhuang, please ask. Empress Dowager Zhuang, who was I with when I was missing for more than a year? Grand Tutor Zhuang was surprised. Why did you suddenly ask this? Empress Dowager Zhuang said indifferently, You only need to answer my question. Yes. Grand Tutor Zhuang cupped his hands and said, After the Empress Dowager escaped from Leprosy Mountain, she wandered among the common people and moved to a small village. She was found by His Majesty's people and was temporarily put under house arrest. Empress Dowager Zhuang impatiently said, I'm asking, who are they? Grand Tutor Zhuang said seriously, the new top scorer Xiao Lu Lang. Xiao Lu Lang. Empress Dowager Zhuang frowned. This name was very familiar, but she could not remember where she had heard it. However, if she had lived in his house, it seemed to make sense. Grand Tutor Zhuang continued, Xiao Lu Lang is His Majesty's person and has been in contact with His Majesty since he was in the village. Later, he went to the capital to take the exam. On the surface, it was to take the exam, but in reality, it was to deceive people and bring the Empress Dowager into the capital. In fact, Hang Er had already found the Empress Dowager's whereabouts in the county and had even gone to meet her. Unfortunately, the Empress Dowager did not know Hang Er at that time and even injured him. Hang Er did not dare to act rashly and could only return to the capital to discuss countermeasures with me. I could only contact my subordinates and force His Majesty to reopen the Imperial College. Since Xiao Lu Lang wanted to enter the capital, he would not leave the Empress Dowager in the village. In fact, the situation at that time was not like this. They were clearly using Xiao Lu Lang, but when Grand Tutor Zhuang thought about it, he felt that Xiao Lu Lang had premeditated. If Grand Tutor Zhuang was lying to deceive Empress Dowager Zhuang, Empress Dowager Zhuang might have seen through it. However, he really felt that way. Empress Dowager Zhuang withdrew her gaze from his face and said, There are more people in the family. Did no one suspect? Grand Tutor Zhuang said, Xiao Lu Lang was originally a poor kid from outside. He declared to the outside world that the Empress Dowager was his great-aunt. Since no one in the family came to seek refuge with him, no one suspected anything. The Empress Dowager suddenly asked about them. Was it because they came to find the Empress Dowager? Zhuang Yueshi had already sent a letter to Grand Tutor Zhuang about what happened in the palace yesterday. Of course, she did not mention that she went to find Gu Jiao. She only told him about the encounter in the Imperial Garden. Grand Tutor Zhuang said, They drugged the Empress Dowager and made her lose her memory. They took the opportunity to get close to the Empress Dowager and captured her heart. The Empress Dowager must not be deceived by them. The Grand Aunt was fake. They were only using her. This knowledge made Empress Dowager Zhuang feel very uncomfortable. But wasn't it strange? Shouldn't she feel angry and humiliated? Shouldn't she give an order to kill their whole family? But why was she only sad? The weather was good and there were no clouds in the blue sky. Marquis Gu had not been to Bai Shui Alley for some time. Today, he was going to the supervisor of the manor built for the Empress Dowager. He passed by Bai Shui Alley and decided to visit Yao Shi. When he reached the gate of the courtyard, he met Gu Jiao, who was carrying little Jing Kong back. Little Jing Kong was asleep in Gu Jiao's arms. There were still tears on his eyelashes. Gu Jiao's expression was even colder than usual. Marquis Gu had not seen this unfilial daughter for some time. She seemed to have grown taller and her eyebrows were more like Yao Shi's. Where did you go? He asked in a bad mood. Gu Jiao ignored him and walked into the courtyard. Marquis Gu gritted his teeth. I'm talking to you. Didn't you hear me? Gu Jiao looked at him coldly. You better not provoke me today. Marquis Gu felt a knot in his heart because of her cold eyes. His hand trembled and the drawing fell out. Gu Jiao was not interested in his things. But it was placed there. She did not want to see it. Then she stopped in her tracks. Marquis Gu quickly picked up the drawing and patted the dust off. He glared at Gu Jiao and said, "What are you looking at? It's not like I built a manor for you." Then he remembered that it was rare for him to show off in front of this girl. He brushed the drawing and said to her, "Do you know what this is? It's a manor built for Miss Zhuang by the Ministry of Works." "What's this?" Gu Jiao held the sleeping little Jing Kong in one hand and pointed at a small on the drawing with the other hand. Marquis Gu raised his eyebrows. "An ancient well. What about this?" "Crabapple tree. It has to be tall. Tie a straw mat to the tree. It's said that it can hold a child." "Why does it need to hold a child?" "How would I know? You can ask the Empress Dowager if you have the ability." It was rare for him to be angry. His tone was very arrogant. But after saying that, he subconsciously raised his hand and covered his head. But Gu Jiao did not beat him. It was quite unexpected. Gu Jiao continued to ask curiously, "What's this?" Today was probably the longest conversation between father and daughter since they met. They had said so many words, but this girl still did not beat him. Is this girl finally becoming filial? Life was so good. This is bamboo, this is a doghouse, this is a chicken coop, there is a bird cage, this is a vegetable field, this is the east room, this is the west room. Marquis Gu's eyebrows danced as he spoke. However, as he spoke, he sensed that something was wrong. He looked at the drawing and then at the yard in front of him. What was going on? Wasn't this the manor? Gu Jiao also saw it. She took out the money bag and looked at it carefully for a long time. "I don't want you any more." She wanted to hear it from her grandaunt. The next day, Gu Jiao went to the imperial palace again with the opportunity of seeing the emperor. This time it was her turn to disappear. She went to the room and disappeared. There were guards in the imperial palace, but it was not too difficult for her to escape. She went to the imperial garden. Maybe it was the good weather, or maybe Empress Dowager Zhuang did not want to stay in Ranshou Palace. In short, she often sat alone in the garden in a daze recently. When Gu Jiao came, she was in a daze in front of a potted crabapple. "Who is it?" Eunuch Qin saw the shadow on the ground and looked back at Gu Jiao. He said vigilantly, "It's you again." Empress Dowager Zhuang heard this and also turned her head. At first sight of Gu Jiao, Empress Dowager Zhuang's mood actually jumped for a moment. But the next second, she thought of something and her heart became cold again. "What are you doing here?" Empress Dowager Zhuang asked in a low voice. Gu Jiao said, "I came to find my grandaunt." Empress Dowager Zhuang said lightly, "There is no grandaunt here." "There is," Gu Jiao said with a trace of grievance. Empress Dowager Zhuang's heart suddenly clenched. She clenched her fingers and said coldly, "Don't play this little game with Aijia. When Aijia killed a bloody path in the harem, you weren't even born yet. These are the leftovers of Aijia. Do you really think Aijia will be fooled by you?" Gu Jiao didn't rush to refute. Instead, she stretched out her hand and spread out her fingers, revealing the purse in her palm. Empress Dowager Zhuang originally didn't know what she had lost. But when she saw the purse, she instantly knew that it was what she had been looking for. Empress Dowager Zhuang's eyes became colder. "Why are Aijia's things in your hands?" Gu Jiao lowered her eyes and said in a very wronged and very obedient manner, "Someone gave it to me and said that you returned it to me. They said that you didn't want me anymore." "How could Aijia not want you?" "You are Aijia's Jiao Jiao." These words suddenly flashed through Empress Dowager Zhuang's mind. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1126749993. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www ZHHBQG. Kombiku Gu mobile reading website. M. ZHHBQG. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.